Alrighty, folks, welcome on into this Central Committee stream with your host Mike from PA. We are live. Oh my goodness, what the fuck just happened? Hello? What happened to the webcam? Hello? That's an interesting decision. So we're gonna let me fix that. I don't know what happens. I don't know what's going on there. Decided it wanted to zoom in on Xi Jinping. I don't know what that was. I don't know what happened there. I'm gonna have to fix that. Anyway, how is everybody doing today? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. Where? Okay. I will start some video so we can start talking. Anyway, chat. God, that's really annoying. Holy shit, that's weird. Anyway, the U.S. wants to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. How's that going? Oh wait, they can't. The Chinese ships just ignored it. So, yeah, let's look at that. Why I fix this real quick.
The United States started its naval blockade yesterday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We're around 17 hours in. And basically, a lot of the traffic, the little trickle we've seen since the start of the war has come to a screeching halt, apart from one incident. And this is really interesting because this is a Chinese-owned vessel. It's now said to have tested the U.S. naval blockade because it has passed through the Strait of Hormuz. Let's take you through this. This is a rich starry. This is a tanker said to be carrying methanol. It started moving from Sharjah here in the UAE. Remember, a lot of these vessels turn off the AIS transponder, so you don't really know the origin of which port that they moved from. Starting to move towards Keshem and Larak Islands, then, starts aborting mission, moves back, and then starts to take that route once again, passing through the strait in the early hours of this morning. Now, this is a tanker that has been sanctioned since March 2023 by the U.S. Treasury Department because it has links to Iran. Now, from what we understand from experts, this tanker was able to move through completely unfazed by the U.S. naval blockade. So we don't know what exactly transpired and how the United States is enforcing this blockade. But this is really interesting to see this tanker that has, links to Iran, that has been sanctioned by the United States, being able to move through the Strait of Hormuz at this time. A lot of the shippers are very reticent to even make the voyage. Number one, they're worried about having to coordinate directly with the Iranians. And then number two, what will they face when they hit the U.S. naval blockade? A lot of the shippers believe that this is a double dilemma in terms of negotiating with both sides. From what we know right now, that the United States is doing this naval blockade to perhaps start negotiations to force Iran to the negotiating table. You'll remember that a lot of the revenues that Iran is getting right now at the start of this war had to do with the toll that they were charging the shippers, Rosemary, and then importantly, the Iranian oil that was being sold. And if you look at some of the tanker traffic since the start of the war, it has been dominated by Iranian-linked vessels and also vessels that are friendly to Iran. So the United States and President Trump has been very clear about this, that any vessels, any shippers that have paid that toll fee could face indictment. And you have an interesting bar chart here showing just how much the traffic plummeted since the start of the war. And you've seen a trickle throughout the over 40 days that we've been facing this conflict. In total, 453 vessels have transited the strait since February 28th. And importantly, just to give you a bit of a perspective, normally 130 vessels pass through the strait.
AIPAC just released an ad boasting of their bribing of Democrats. Instalink, thank you. Okay, so as you can see, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Like, only basically vessels approved by Iran are passing through. And that being said, a Chinese vessel just passed through and the U.S. didn't do anything. Which, of course, like, what are they going to do? Attack a Chinese ship? Like, what are we doing here? And this, ladies and gentlemen, is literally the reality we're trapped in. Grand warp. Chinese ships ignore U.S. blockade. Like, and good? Like, good? I hope they do. But we're trapped in this, like, we're trapped in this world where we live in this is a postmodern war. And it's really, I don't know how else to describe it, which is the United States of America is doing certain things and they're resulting in certain consequences. But the markets are ignoring those things and those consequences in favor of a narrative that makes them feel like nothing is going wrong. And it's like the markets are acting as if the possibility that they want is the possibility that is going to happen because they like Trump. Basically, the capitalist class likes Trump. And so they're no longer proceeding as if reality is happening. Now, and then that offers a difficult question to everybody, which is, okay, is what we believe to be happening not happening and the markets are actually correct? Or are the markets creating an escalating error that will eventually come in contact with reality? I think the best analogy, and it's an analogy I use a lot, but it's something that intuitively makes sense to me, maybe because I've spent so much time in airplanes and being a pilot. When you're crashing, most of the time, it's impossible to tell the difference between crashing and descending. Unless you get into a really, I mean, there are certain scenarios where, you know, you're very fucked and it's very obvious the entire time you're crashing. But there are other scenarios where you're just descending too fast. And the only way you could tell is if you're in the cockpit and you're looking at the instruments. And so in most crashes, nobody has no idea that anything has gone wrong until the very end. And then everything goes dark. You hit the ground going so fast that the neuron impulses of pain from your feet don't have time to reach your brain before your brain hits the ground. Okay, that's how, you know what I mean? So it just goes from you're having a normal experience to blackness, controlled flight into terrain. That's exactly what it looks like. This looks like an incident of controlled flight into terrain, which is you're flying straight and level and there's a mountain in front of you and you don't even know you're about to crash. The only people that know they're about to crash are the people that are looking at the instruments and are looking out of the front windscreen. And a lot of the times, if pilots are making in big enough conditions, in the wrong type of conditions, in the wrong type of terrain, even the pilots don't know up until the moment that they're dead. If you spend a lot of time researching accidents and you go back through history, and I think every pilot should do this, a significant portion of the time, the pilots just start to realize something is wrong right before they crash. They'll be like, wait a minute, there's not supposed to be any terrain here. Boom. They don't even have enough time to figure out to be scared before they crash. So, and by the way, we've instituted a lot of procedures and technology and training and, means to fix that. Now we have all sorts of like cross checks and double checks and systems, both inside and outside the plane to prevent that kind of thing from happening. But that's not true of our economy. Okay. That sounds like regulations. The stock market has been decoupled from fundamentals for quite some time. Oh, no, it's always been like this, non-punter. It's always been like this. The stock market has always been able to be like this because it is a social contingency. That's why the worship of the market is the pathology that is killing humanity. The worship, and I say worship knowingly, we have a religion. We have a market fundamentalist religion. We worship the markets as if they have divine knowledge. And we're allowing ourselves to we're killing our species because we're worshiping this market. Just study humanity anthropologically. Study humanity like a biologist would. Look at our conditions. The population is declining. The biosphere that we live in is degrading. If we were a species that was being studied, we would be a threatened species because the conditions that we existed in, that we evolved in, that we grew in, are being destroyed. Now, we haven't gotten to the point where we're actually endangered, but the conditions surrounding our flourishing are getting worse. Our species health is going down. Our reproduction is going down. You sound like liberals when they call socialism a religion. Liberals just project. We have a market fundamentalist belief system. That's what the Democrats and the Republicans agree on. The Iran blockade is meant to starve China. Will it work? No, of course not. And so we have a world where The markets are just operating on a belief that the war is just going to end soon. Demand destruction will spread and hope U.S. oil prices fall 6% on hope Iran peace talks will continue. Huh? The United States announced a blockade of oil. So the Iranian blockade was a partial blockade, right? If you paid tolls to Iran, if you were a friendly country to Iran, Iran would allow your oil ships to transit the strait. The United States comes forward and says, no, we're going to have a complete blockade. No one is allowed. And oil prices fell on less oil trade. Like, I understand decoupling from fundamentals, but you cannot decouple from the actual availability of the underlying commodity. What are we talking about here? Well, that's the issue, is we haven't seen that happen yet, right? At least in the United States, we haven't. And so we have to ask ourselves, okay, so what is actually happening, right? What is actually happening? Is there actually an oil shortage? Or is oil being sold out of the Middle East through mechanisms that we're not aware of, right? That's the one possibility, right? That there is no blockade, that oil is being sold anyway, that the information that we're getting is incorrect. That's one possibility. The second possibility is we still have physical delivery of oil from before the war. So there is no apparent shortages, right? Ships are still showing up laden with oil at terminals. So there is no physical shortage yet. So the markets are proceeding on the assumption that the war is about to imminently end and a flood of oil will be available, right? So, and by the way, I don't want us, and this is something that's very important for you. This is like lesson number 1 from Mike from PA. I want you to understand. This is what separates me from almost every other left winger, is I don't want you to just put your head in the sand, live in a bubble, have assumptions, never test them against reality, never look outside the informational ecosystem that you're used to. You know, allowing your hopes of an end of American aggression to supersede your actual information. This is a crisis that can happen a lot on the left. Is people will adopt of worldviews because or positions on the world because it feels good, rather than it's the best understanding of the available information. Philippines says it is seeking U.S. permission to buy more Russian crude as the import-dependent country scrambles to shore up scarce oil supplies. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is how it's going, right? You have an oil export crisis. Who loses out first? American puppets. Oil will dry up to them first. So it's going to be things like the Philippines. It's going to be those type of states that are dependent upon U.S. hegemony, who are American puppets. They're the ones who are going to go dry first. Then, only then, will it start affecting Western countries. Protesters getting arrested in New York. Oh, yeah. I saw this yesterday. They're protesting Chuck Schumer. Money becomes more and more abstract and intangible as capitalism goes on. Squirrel skins to gold, silver, metal coins, paper notes. Okay, first of all, squirrel skins was never capitalism. Gold and silver have been existed since ancient times. And this is the reality that we're in
on a daily basis. Richard Mead is the editor-in-chief of Lloyd's List Intelligence, and he's with us now live from London. Richard, good to see you. You and I have been talking consistently since the start of the war. And
did you hear YouTube banned Iranian Lego vids? That does not surprise me whatsoever. They're not going to allow, we live in a censored media environment. They're not going to allow Iran to communicate like that. They're not going to. Unfortunately, they're not going to be able to stop it. But my freedoms, yeah, you don't have any freedom.
There's been, really interesting developments, specifically over the past few hours. After the U.S. naval blockade came into effect, we saw one Chinese-linked tanker that was sanctioned by the United States since 2023 transiting through the strait after initially had, backed out and then moved through once again. What do we know about the rich Starry and whether it was challenged by the U.S. Navy?
Well, at the moment, we know very little. It's still moving, which suggests that it hasn't been challenged by the US. To be clear, we're not entirely sure that this was laden with Iranian crude. It's been used as floating storage for a while. It entered back into the Gulf about 10 to 12 days ago from memory. And then it was heading out of the Gulf this weekend and did a bit of a U-turn at the point that Donald Trump announced the blockade. It then made a break for it last night and has exited. Now, this is, as you say, a sanctioned, falsely flagged ship. It is nominally fraudulently flagged to Malawi, but we know it's a fraud. This probably would be a target, but it seems to have got out. We've also got a number of other shadow fleet tankers, one of which is sanctioned, heading in. So it's going to be interesting to see how the US responds to this. But right now, the vast majority of shipping is not moving on either side.
Yeah, so give me a sense of what shippers are telling you. You know, there's a lot of confusion about who to negotiate with. On the Iranian side, I mean, it's been very clear, coordinate directly with Iranian forces. Now you've got the US naval blockade. Is there any appetite to move through the Strait, even if vessels are not at any Iranian ports or Iranian territorial waters?
Right now, no. And I keep telling you, uncertainty is reigning across the shipping industry.
Yeah.
That goes in peaks and troughs. If you'd asked me just before the weekend, I would have told you that there were at least half a dozen ship owners that were preparing their ships to move out. And we did see probably the busiest period of activity in terms of transits through the Strait over the weekend. Around 30 ships transited. The shutters then came down. And as far as I can tell from most mainstream ship owners with their tankers still inside the Gulf, absolutely no appetite to move right now until they get some clarity. For those that were looking to get in, they are, again, waiting to see what happens over the next few hours. You've got a double blockade, essentially.
Yeah.
You've got the US essentially blockading Iranian-linked tankers, and then you've got the existing restrictions and threats. And if you do engage with the Iranians, are the US going to get you, and vice versa? The shipping industry is stuck in the middle right now.
Yeah, I mean, I also, was looking at marine traffic data, and in total, since the war began, there are around 450 vessels that have been able to transit through the Strait of Hormuz, keeping in mind that it's usually 130 vessels per day. The big question now becomes, how many of these vessels paid a toll to Iran, given that President Trump has said any vessel and any shipper that has paid will be indicted? What data do we have on who actually paid Iran directly?
Very little direct evidence, and that's deliberately so. I think everybody was very nervous about the tolls. Essentially, the money that was being paid was going directly to the IRGC, which is designated as a terrorist organization by certainly the US and the EU. No Western ship owner is going to want a paper record of that, and we know that settlement was being done in yuan or crypto. So I think probably there's a few nervous ship owners that we know to have paid. But I would stress that the vast majority probably haven't paid. I think, you're looking at a three-tier system. There's the Iranian ships themselves. Obviously, they're not charging their own ships to go through. There's the ones that got through with diplomatic agreements. So the Indian government has been absolutely clear that they definitely did not pay for any of their tankers to get out. And there are similar agreements with lots of other countries. There are a small amount that we know to have settled at least a fee. Now, in some cases, that was a large fee, around $2 million for a couple of tankers that we know about. In some cases, this was being passed off as an administration cost, more in the tune of around $150,000 to $200,000. So I think probably there's going to be a few nervous questions as to how some of these ships got out, but that's for tomorrow. Right now, it's a question of what happens immediately and how we get the vessels moving.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump wants to see the Strait opening up. Do you think that putting in a US blockade is going to have that effect?
It's a little bit early to tell. I think, as I say, right now, nothing is moving. So I think to that extent, it is having an impact. But we know that there's a couple of ships heading in westbound. We don't know whether they're going to try to get into Iranian ports. We've just seen that there's one heading eastbound using what we call a zombie number. These are essentially tankers using identification of ships that have been scrapped years ago, trying to falsely, give themselves an identity. It'll be interesting to see whether the US Navy intercepts any of these. I think we're really now just waiting to see what the actual action is and the enforcement strategy from the US side.
All right, Richard Mead, really great to have you with us. Always a pleasure to speak to you. Give us so much clarity on what's happening in the seas. Much appreciated.
I I don't know what else to say. A systemic jet fuel shortage is brewing in Europe, and flights could be hit hard. Analysts told CNBC that a jet fuel shortage is looming in Europe and the Middle East as the Middle East crisis becomes prolonged. This will result in severe flight cancellations in the summer after carriers have already reduced flight capacity for some routes. Europe's airline industry is at a risk of systemic jet fuel shortage in the next few weeks if the Strait of Hormuz blockade continues, with the potential of hundreds of flight cuts, according to experts. Claudio Galimberti, chief economist at Rystad Energy, told CNBC's Rakita Gupta on Europe Early Edition on Tuesday that the situation facing airlines pretty much depends on how many barrels will be flowing through the strait.
Qantas has joined a growing number of airlines taking measures amid surging fuel costs, with the Australian carrier set to cut domestic routes. Meanwhile, the CEO of Virgin Atlantic has warned higher jet fuel prices are here to stay. The Airports Council International Europe has reportedly warned that the continent faces systemic shortages of jet fuel if the Strait of Hormuz does not fully open within the next 3 weeks, according to a letter viewed by the Financial...
Okay, so basically what it seems to be happening here in chat is that Trump is trying to keep this war going in order to allow Israel to annex Lebanese territory, excuse me, and he continually waffles around because he understands that he has supreme power in the markets, right? He says, you know, oh yeah, you know, we're winning bigly, and there is a belief, and this is the belief that Donald Trump has successfully inculcated, which is the belief that he's not going to let the markets crash, and so therefore the markets don't crash. Like, that seems to be the world we live in, where the markets are acting as if Donald Trump has the ability to prevent the markets from crashing. Therefore, the markets will not crash. And I'm almost in awe of how idiotic it is. It's like there seems to be no sign of any kind of imminent peace deal. The Israelis are not doing well in Lebanon. Trump's approval rating is crashing super hard. So politically, he's in hot water. He has maybe 6 months. You know, he's got 6 months before he's a fucking lame duck. His approval rating is not going to be going up in the face of Democrats controlling the House and the Senate. His approval rating is not going to go up. He's not going to be able to do any more policies to prop these people up. Hezbollah is releasing videos of them trick-shotting with FPV drones. Well, you don't really see that shit in mainstream. You don't see that stuff in mainstream platforms anymore. Israel has that stuff pretty locked down. You have to go and hunt for it. So we have jet fuel shortage in 3 weeks. So I assume, presumably, Donald Trump is going to just surrender before this actually happens. And that is the belief. Basically, the markets believe Taco Trump. And therefore, the markets are being held up by that fundamental belief. Trump is going to cave. He's not actually going to make any of us pay. None of our treats are going to be lost. That's it. In fact, you might as well invest now, because when Trump tacos, the markets are going to go sky high. That is the belief. So the more the negative information comes out, the more paradoxically the markets do not react, because that's actually evidence that Trump is going to taco harder. Do you see what I mean? So like, oh yeah, jet fuel shortages in a couple weeks. Well, that just means Trump's going to taco even harder. Am I right, guys? That is the mentality. It's like, oh, the harder the shortage, the more the stock market's going to go up, because that means Trump's going to give in.
Time. So, Claudia, I want to get back to you on this to discuss how acute the shortages in Europe are becoming. We know that Southeast Asia is already dealing with this. The industry bodies, as we mentioned, they're warning that there could be shortages within the next few weeks. What would a supply crunch mean for Europe?
So Europe is in a slightly better position than Asia because of the SPR, and that's the starting point. SPR being Strategic Petroleum Reserve. When it comes to the oil products, jet is going to be the first to be hit. We have already seen in some airports in Europe shortages, so cuts of flights. The situation can, within the next 3-4 weeks, can become systemic. So you can have severe cuts of flights in Europe already starting in May and June. So and that pretty much depends on how many barrels will be flowing through the straits. So right now, it's basically for the past 24 hours is down to zero. Let's bear in mind that we have lost, since the start of the war, we have lost 400 million barrels. That's an incredible amount of barrels. That these are all the production shut in the Middle East. And every day that goes by, we are adding 10 to 12 million barrels a day on top. So when it comes to the reason why jet fuel is so short, that was produced primarily by the refineries in the Middle East and in Asia, which are now short of crude. And therefore, that's the key reason why there is the shortage right now. But of course, I mean, if the strait remains closed or the flows are below a certain number, let's say below 4 million barrels per day, then we are going to see shortages in Southeast Asia and in Europe in Q3.
So how high do oil prices need to go before we start to see?
It's because he didn't escalate. He went from destroy your civilization to I'm going to blockade your blockade. He could be seen as a tacit surrender, but now he needs to say faith. But he's not. But he's not, though. That's the thing that's funny is saying I'm going to destroy your civilization and then not doing anything, but actually increasing the conflict by my chair is okay. That's better. Jesus Christ. Saying I'm going to decrease your blockade or I'm going to destroy your civilization, but then instead of doing that, going from a one-sided blockade to a double-sided blockade, that is an escalation. The reason why they stopped bombing Iran is they're out of long-range exquisite weapons. They don't have as many weapons as they used to. They don't have the cruise missiles. They don't have the tomahawks. They're losing drones. They've lost like a dozen Reaper drones or more. They're having to pull back. They're not stopping the attacks on Iran because they've decided to de-escalate. They've just run out of the weapons that are immune to Iran's air defenses. So now they're going to do a blockade of the blockade. That's an escalation. That is not a de-escalation. And the markets are acting like it's a de-escalation. They went and had, talks in Pakistan, and there was no fucking result. I would appreciate your take on the recent video by Richard Medhurst about the U.S. approach. We have a rule in the chat in the stream, which is if you have something that you want me to check out, there are two places you put them. One, use content suggestion section on the Discord. The second is in the chat. Now, if I haven't brought it up, maybe I did check the Discord or whatever, and you would like to, you would like me to check it out. Just post the link. Don't give me a quest to try to find what the fuck you're talking about. Like, that's literally a waste of everybody's time, and it's unworkable. That's just, advice for going forward. Same thing with Hasan. If you want Hasan to look at something, don't give him a quest to go look it up. He'll never get clicked. He'll never do it because it takes time, and I don't even exactly know what you're talking about. So it's like, okay, I have to look up Richard Medhurst, and it's like, is this the video he meant, or does he mean this video? You have to communicate more precisely. Just a pro tip. I thought I needed to be a sub. No, you should be a sub because I need money.
Demand destruction or recession risk, because that's one of the key elements to whether we get inflation in the longer term, is whether it actually starts to impact demand. Of course, inflation also has that kind of that temporary lag.
Yes. So it depends on the region. So for those that are oil importing region, the 130 is already a big problem because that generates an impulse response.
Look at this chat. Global recession is inevitable if Strait of Hormuz stays shut. Let's assume the strait is shut down for the next 6 to 12 months. The world's going to end up in a recession. There's no way to avoid that. As a result, the world is going to see a massive shift toward alternative fuel sources, including wind, solar, and nuclear, he added. Yet it's almost as if the markets are a complete delusion.
If they don't have an oil sector,
you're a panicky, bro. It's going to be fine. It's so true.
A net oil exporter. So I'm no longer sure that very high oil pricing in the United States would automatically trigger a recession. As a matter of fact, most likely not, probably a slowdown. But when it comes to Europe and Asia, all these places in Asia that are net oil importer, 130 is already a problem, and 150, the higher it goes, of course, the higher the problem becomes. We think that
that's
if
interesting,
the strait remains closed for 6 months, then we can see $200.
And then super quick, just for timing, who's going to be the most vulnerable? Is it Asia, is it Europe, or is it emerging markets?
Asia, for sure. So Southeast Asia, not China. China has enough buffers. So China built a lot of strategic petroleum reserve and a lot of commercial stocks. For sure, all Southeast Asia, they all depend heavily on the production in the Middle East. But Europe as well. So Europe is the next in line.
Wow, I can't believe China is. So I don't know if you guys saw this. So we're in a world of like, okay, everybody's in like some sort of delusional mode where no one seems to be reacting to the reality of what's going on. The markets they're just, yeah, everything's going to be fine. Oil prices dropped another $5 a barrel today so far. And the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Crypto is up quite a bit. It's up almost, it was down to like 66,000 a coin, now up to 74,000. Off the lows, got down to 63,000. And we have this unbelievable kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. It is a, oh, it's going to be fine mentality. Oil prices fall 6% on hope Iran peace talks will continue.
Oil is really the story this hour. Brent and WTI now pushing further below $100 a barrel. Energy markets are clearly reacting to news that we could be on track for a second round of ceasefire talks, with Washington and Tehran reportedly getting back to the negotiation table as soon as this week. As you flagged, Reuters reports that the US and Iranian negotiation teams could return to Islamabad for peace talks later this week. That's according to 4 sources who have spoken with the agency. If that does materialize, of course, the sticking points are really significant. On top of the list is the Strait of Hormuz, but you also have the regional ceasefire, Iran's nuclear stockpile, sanctions relief, and Tehran's regional alliances. Any one of these issues could sink a deal, and all of them remain unresolved. The Vice President J.D. Vance said overnight that the ball is in Iran's court. President Trump has also said he is confident a deal will come, but only if Tehran agrees to permanently abandon its nuclear program. That was the clear sticking point that sunk the Islamabad talks at the weekend. Meanwhile, on the Strait of Hormuz, on the water right now, as you mentioned as well, the US Navy blockade of all Iranian ports is now in effect. Iran has called the American blockade piracy and says it's put its own armed forces on maximum combat alert. But it does appear that the worst case scenario has so far been avoided, with the US stopping short of seizing tankers or striking ships in a Venezuela-style operation that the president flagged overnight. So far, so good, I guess you could say, in the Strait of Hormuz. And we have seen oil prices reacting in tandem here, pulling lower, not just on the fact that the situation inside the strait appears status quo, but also because there is momentum now for what could potentially be a second chance at a diplomatic off-ramp to this conflict.
They're attacking Hasan again? Hamas over Israel every single time. Far left streamer Hasan Piker doubles down on his support of Hamas, calling the Islamic terror group lesser evil compared to Israel. Piker also stood by his past comments saying the terrorist organization is 1,000 times better than Israel. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say it. I think this is, I think that what I don't think that this is the right way to make the argument. I don't think this is the right way to make the argument. I'm gonna go ahead and say that I think this is an optics L for Hasan. I'm sorry, chat. Like, I get that it's objectively true that Israel has killed far more people than Hamas and it's doing a genocide and Hamas isn't. But this isn't actually what he believes. He's not a Hamas supporter. He was making a relative argument between Hamas and Israel. And he was saying Hamas, if you measure human lives, is far less damaging than Israel. But this is like normie poison. That being said, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not. Like, maybe people are ready to hear this. You know, you know what I mean? Like, I think of it as like I think of it, what I would say is like, people always talk about Hamas as if all of Palestinians are terrorists, but in reality, the resistance comes from all aspects of Palestinian society because they're being genocided. People talk about Hamas because that is the stereotype of Islamic extremism that the United States and Israel want to spread to flatten the true diversity of thought and experience of the Palestinian people who are being collectively targeted. I just don't, I mean, Hamas is a right-wing organization. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, they're not the only resistance forces. With that being said, I mean, if he's able to pull this off, I'm happy to recalibrate. I just think it's like, you don't have to say this. You're giving them like bait. Also, Hamas is a prescribed terrorist organization. You got to be careful with that because they will prosecute you. Giannis was there on October 7th saying he would never condemn Hamas. Hasan is there now. I am not saying to condemn Hamas. I'm just saying optically, you know, it hurts you. But again, maybe not. Maybe people hate Israel so much that I no longer have to worry about that. You know what I mean? Both you and Hasan are failing to understand that they're making up shit and saying he said it now. I mean, yeah, that's true. They are doing that. They are doing that. I don't know. I mean, things are changing. You know, positions are changing. People are starting to come out and say, like, I'll tell you what I said on October 7th. You want to see what I said on October 7th? I'll tell you what I said on October 7th. When occupying soldiers get shot, that is war. And occupied people have the untrammeled and full legal right to resist. That's what I said on October 7th. So it's not like this is a position of mine that, like, I was there from the day one going like, no, I mean, the Palestinian resistance has the right to attack their occupier. Like, there's no question about that. There's no doubt about that. I think the issue needs provocation and Fox is literally doing his work for him. Hasan's real content has been boosted so hard. Every other rec on YouTube right now is good Hasan content instead of fuck Hasan content. Yeah, I know about that. I wish I was able to take advantage of that. Which actually, let's do that right now, chat. Let's do a segment so I could post it on YouTube. This dropped on Sunday. Hasan, Ezra Klein bends the knee. Hasan is not the enemy. Hasan Piker. Now, I am a Ezra Klein despiser. I think Ezra Klein may be one of the worst people in American politics today. Total piece of shit, total garbage. But they changed. By the way, they changed the name. It used to be Hasan Piker is not the enemy. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? How they changed the headline to take Hasan's name out of it. New York Times faces backlash for changing headline of op-ed on far left streamer Hasan Piker. So they got the boss call, which is why, you know, I wasn't streaming on Sunday, so I didn't react to this. And yesterday we were talking about other shit, namely Zoran Mamdani's 100-day anniversary. But I really, really, really want to read this. He's just an op that could see a second into the future. He's nothing special for seeing Hasan as a financial gain for him. Just an op. Absolutely. Absolutely. Ezra Klein is an op. He can just read the polls and actually understand them. And Ezra Klein is interested in self-promotion. So when Ezra Klein says this, he fought tooth and nail against people like me and Hasan, right? He basically implied that Zoran Mamdani was an anti-Semite right before the primary and told people to vote Brad Lander instead. He's an op, and he's an ideological neoliberal. But he's also smart enough to like look at polling and go, wow, the base of Democrats hate Israel. So if the neoliberal wing of the party ties itself to Israel, then it's toast. And to him, Israel is dispensable. Israel is something that could be dropped in favor of defensive capitalism, right? Israel is not necessary for capitalism or American empire. You know, we could just drop them, just like we dropped Iraq, just like we dropped Afghanistan, just like we dropped Vietnam, just like we dropped South Africa, the apartheid South Africa. Like, we could just drop this. The moment it is more harmful than it is positive for the American empire, we could just drop this shit. And he's seeing, by the way, that Hasan Piker has complete, total victory. This is Hasan taking a selfie with a bunch of young fans with Abdul in Michigan. Who else running for Senate right now could pop up and have this type of shit at an average college campus? Seriously, serious question. What candidate running for Senate right now could pop up at a college campus and have students showing up by the hundreds and thousands?
This is why there's no liberal Joe Rogan.
I was hopeful that Ezra actually read this, but he didn't. Imagine destiny of that pick. Have you guys seen DGG meetups? They usually make it hard. They make it hard for you to actually find it. Like they spam like fake pictures on Destiny subreddit because the real one is so bad. Fetterman would get that turnout because it's just because people think it's so true. Rosalux, are you linking me fake ones? Yeah. See, these are ones they spammed to try to cover up the actual meetups. I told Hasan this the other day. I work at Brown University Dining, and we had a Student Workers Alliance meeting last week. I watched Hasan, and I brought up Hasan, and the number of students that watched Hasan and were so happy I did was fucking adorable and inspiring. Yeah, of course. After the 2024 elections, there was a panic among Democrats about the absence of a liberal Joe Rogan. Could one be found? Could one be created? It was an epic exercise in missing the point. You cannot have a liberal Joe Rogan because Rogan is not particularly political. His audience cohered around conversations with comedians, MMA figures, bodybuilders, and psychonauts. That's what made him politically influential. He could reach millions of people who were not otherwise interested in politics. The problem Democrats actually had, one of them anyway, was that they didn't like Rogan and criticized others for going on his show. Who do you mean? What do you mean criticized others? Who's the others? This is, by the way, how Ezra Klein does his propaganda. Ezra Klein does his propaganda by not telling you who are the people that criticize for going on Joe Rogan. The answer is it was Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders draws criticism for touting Joe Rogan endorsement. Bernie Sanders is facing backlash from Democrats after his campaign trumpeted an endorsement from comedian Joe Rogan, a popular podcast and YouTube talk show host with a history of making racist, homophobic, and transphobic comments. By the way, chat, the Democrats attacked Bernie Sanders for getting the support of Joe Rogan, even though Bernie Sanders had a far better trans policy platform than Hillary Clinton, than Joe Biden, right? But they're saying that, oh, he's associated with the transphobes, so he's transphobic. Now the Democrats are saying, we want to, you just had Gavin Newsom veto a bill from the California legislature to allow trans people to buy a year's worth of hormones in advance, right? He vetoed that. Why did he veto that? Because he was trying to pander to transphobes. Actual policy blocked to pander to transphobes. And they used to say Bernie Sanders was transphobic. Rogan, a libertarian-leaning broadcaster with a public persona in the mold of Howard Stern, is a divisive figure who said the N-word on his show, and in 2013 questioned, using offensive language, whether transgender MMA fighters should be able to compete against other women. Like, look at the fucking reality. Like, listen to this. Sanders' strategic targeting of young, unaffiliated, and working-class voters often takes them to places and on platforms like Twitch that most Democratic candidates rarely venture. But that practice, which brings a figure like Rogan into the political spotlight, also carries the risk of alienating parts of the liberal base that, especially the Trump era, has become increasingly cautious about the company it keeps and what that signals to marginalized communities. Joe Biden said his best friend in the Senate was one of the most virulent racist senators in the history of America. Like, I want you to understand how absurd this is. I mean, I want you to understand that Joe Biden was friends with some of the most disgusting, outright open political racists in history. Jesse Helms, Strom Thurmond. And that's just the beginning. God, I think there was an Alabama senator. James Eastland. Let's look this up. I want to show you this, guys, because it's so insane. I want to show you guys James Eastland. James Eastland was an American attorney, plantation owner, and politician from Mississippi. A Democrat, he served in the United States Senate in 1941 until late 1978. He led the Southern resistance against racial integration during the Civil Rights Movement, often speaking of African Americans as an inferior race. He was called the voice of the white South and godfather of Mississippi politics. Okay? And Joe Biden... Okay, this is a bad source. Let's get a better source. Here we go. The letters were obtained from the University of Mississippi, which hosts Senator James Eastland's archived papers. Correspondence from 1972 to 1978 shows Joe Biden, at the time a young senator, trying to establish a relationship with Eastland, a staunch segregationist. Letters highlight Biden's committee assignments and anti-busing legislation. If you want to know what anti-busing legislation was, busing was a program to help black children who were stuck in racialized ghettos, having their children bused to school districts adjacent to them that were previously all white. So to allow those children to take advantage of the resources that were, spent on segregated school systems. It was racial integration program. Joe Biden was allying with segregationists who were calling black people an inferior race in order to block that, and has time and time again. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, because I want you to understand that this associational politics stuff is total bullshit, right? Joe Biden, Joe Rogan has a bad take about trans people. They're going to pretend that Bernie Sanders is transphobic, right? Joe Biden works with segregationists to harm black people directly as a matter of policy, and it's ignorable. They tried repeatedly to cancel him for his comments about trans people and his skepticism of COVID vaccines. To the extent that he's now a right-coded figure, it's not because he started that way. Rogan's political views are mixed. He backed Bernie Sanders in 2020. He supports universal health care and abortion rights. He dislikes vaccine mandates and lacks border control. But it should have been a surprise when, after years of being attacked by the left, he wasn't attacked by the left. This is a lie. This is a fucking lie. He was attacked by the corporate centrist Democrats doing fake woke bullshit. This is a lie. This is a fucking lie. And at the time, you could go look at what I said. Like, again, I think I represent a pretty mainstream left-wing position in America. And what I said at the time is that the Joe Rogan endorsement was good. Here's what I said. January 24th, 2020, Joe Rogan has expressed clearly transphobic views in the past. However, the ultimate expression of political power most people exercise in the system is their vote. By voting for and advocating on behalf of Bernie Sanders, Joe Rogan is beginning to undo that harm. We're winning. Oh, wait, I thought I was canceling him. But instead, I was like, no. Maybe he has dumb takes about trans people, but he's supporting the most pro-trans candidate. That's a good thing. We should welcome him into the tent. Big tent politics. Notice how these fucking liars, by the way, this is why I am an Ezra Klein hater. I'm an Ezra Klein hater because he's obfuscating history and spinning it. The reality is, Bernie Sanders was going on places like Twitch. Bernie Sanders was going on places like Joe Rogan in the podcast sphere. He was building up support from young men. They called us Bernie Bros. And they tried to imply that Bernie Sanders was transphobic, that he was racist, that he was sexist. That wasn't the left. That was the corporate, centrist, MAGA-lite Democrats using whatever lies they can to slander us. And and again, Ezra Klein in the paper of record, spinning lies. It wasn't the left that attacked Bernie Sanders for the Joe Rogan endorsement. It was the corporate centrist Elizabeth Warren, Ezra Klein, faux progressive Zionist wing. After years of being attacked by the left, he endorsed Donald Trump in 2024. The simplest way to tell people which side they're on is to tell them how much your side hates them. That was you, Ezra. By the way, did Ezra Klein make it? Can someone look that up for me? Did Ezra Klein ever make a comment on the Joe Rogan endorsement? I could tell you, if he made a contemporaneous comment, it was probably about how it was bad. That brings me to more important than it might look controversy that has burst out over leftist streamer Hasan Piker. He had a breakout moment over the past year as Democrats began obsessing over the absence of a liberal Joe Rogan, and Piker, who mixes leftist politics with bro-ish aesthetic, was proffered as a possible answer. A category error because, again, the whole point of Rogan's political power is that his show mostly avoids politics. And this is where, by the way, as this is Ezra Klein bending the knee to Hasan, I'm glad to see it. But I want you to understand this also shows you how unsophisticated Ezra Klein is in the online space. Now, I am a Twitch streamer primarily, right? I exist on Twitch. Twitch is primarily not a political website. Most of the people on Twitch are not here for politics, okay? However, we have been a large section of Twitch I've been a Twitch streamer, a full-time Twitch streamer since January of 2020. So 6 years now, over 6 years of being my full-time job is a left-wing political Twitch streamer. Okay? Hasan has been a full-time political Twitch streamer, I think, since, I want to say it's like 2019, right? Like March 2019, somewhere around there, if not a little bit earlier. And so that's been true. But the thing is, Hasan in particular, he exists in the non-political spaces on Twitch. He's friends with Valkyrie. He's friends with Austin Show. He was friends with literally all the biggest non-political streamers, right? He was existing in that non-political space. He was the transitionary point from normie spaces or apolitical spaces and created an alt-left pipeline, right? Where you would talk with, say, somebody like, he would be friends with somebody like, say, Vanilla Mace, right? Vanilla Mace is not a political content creator, right? But she's friendly with Hasan. She hooks up with Hasan. She collaborates with Hasan. She creates an alt-left pipeline. That is what you don't understand, you dumb fuck, is that Joe Rogan was previously somebody who was part of that alt-left pipeline. He would bring on people like Kyle Kalinske. He would bring on people like Bernie Sanders. He would bring on people like Cordell West. He would bring on those type of people to create an alt-left pipeline. So there is no firm political and apolitical space. This is why Ezra Klein's analysis is dated. This is why he brings no value. So not only is he lying about the past, he can't analyze the present. Oh my God, this is a good take. I want to say mea culpa. Ezra Klein had a good take. Bernie's strength is that he can win over some voters who are skeptical of Democrats like Joe Rogan. If you think getting Trump out of office is actually important, that's a good thing, and he should lead into it. This will get me ratioed or whatever, but a lot of Twitter seems to want to enforce a politics where you only work or ally with people you agree almost totally with. But to get anything done in our system, it requires working with people you often disagree with. And Rogan isn't even conservative. Wait till the next Democratic president is back to cutting deals with Mitch McConnell or desperately trying to get Lindsey Graham to vote for something. Well, he was right about that. How'd that work out, by the way? But no, mea culpa. Ezra Klein was right. He was smart enough to say that. That's good. But his analysis of the online space is still bad. His analysis of the space is bad. And the other thing is, like, if you look at Hasan, there is no clean politics, apolitical spaces anymore. That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. That's what makes the new ungate-kept reality so different. And Hasan is connected with a lot of people that are closer to what I would call the left-wing Joe Rogan. Somebody like Stavros. Stavros is an example of what I would call the left-wing Joe Rogan, right? A stand-up comedian, an actor, somebody whose politics, their left-wing politics, they wear on their sleeve, but it isn't what they do. They're not a political commentator. They are a comedian. But guess what? They're connected to the alt-left pipeline, which is connected to Hasan. Adam Friedland is the left Joe Rogan? Nah, I don't. I mean, maybe. I mean, again, Adam Friedland is another possibility. But pick over Piker's years of streaming, you could find offensive things he said, among them that America deserved 9/11, that his favorite flag is Hezbollah, that a liberal Zionist is akin to a liberal Nazi. Now, by the way, he was talking about the aesthetics. Now, I got to tell you, I'm more of an Angola fan than I am a Hezbollah fan, if we're going by flag aesthetics. You know, this is the gear and the machete, just that hits. Okay, that fucking hits. Anyway, let's keep going. And that a liberal Zionist is akin to a liberal Nazi. And that's reality, because liberal Zionism doesn't exist anymore, Ezra Klein. Binationalism, that's a myth. It doesn't exist in Israeli politics anymore. 70% of Israelis support the genocide of Palestinians and ethnic cleansing. So when you say you're a liberal Zionist, like the idea of having a binationalist society that recognizes Palestinians as full citizens and secularizes the Israeli state, and that dream has gone away, and it's been dead for decades and decades. It's not true. The longest serving prime minister of Israel is Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu is Israel. So when you say that, it's because of the actual reality of the way Israel operates, my friend. The myth of binationalism, the myth of a negotiated peace, the two-state cliche, it's all a lie. And it's only used to obfuscate for Westerners, to give them a fantasy to hold on to while we actually support the genocide. Streamer has said offensive thing isn't really a news story, but then Abdul El Sayed, the more DSA-ish candidate in the Democratic Senate primary in Michigan, began rallying with Piker. That led Third Way, a centrist group that previously demanded that Democrats draw a line in the sand and shun Hasan Piker and his fellow Jew haters, to send a letter to El Sayed demanding details about how closely you align with the most abhorrent views. One of the things that's really interesting about this is, and this is how Ezra Klein does soft propaganda for the centrists, is Third Way had just said 2 weeks prior to this, setting out this like questionnaire and demanding that Hasan Piker be expelled and shunned. They had just said we need to be able to go and talk to people that we don't agree with. We need to stop canceling people. Could someone link me that quote? So Third Way went from, on the one hand, hey, we got to be willing to talk to Nazis and right-wingers, and we shouldn't cancel people, to the very next week trying to cancel Hasan Piker. Why are you not exposing Third Way's hypocrisy? Why are you not exposing the fact that Third Way is an ideologically right-wing, motivated, hypocritical, fascist organization that does nothing but launder Republican GOP money in Democratic primaries? Jonathan Greenblatt, the head of the Anti-Defamation League, said Piker reflected the dangerous normalization of anti-Semitism in our politics. Politico then asked a number. Does anyone know what we're looking for? Yeah. Third Way aligned people were saying that we should be willing to go to places like Joe Rogan, that we should be willing to go to offensive places and not try to lock people out. If people are really arguing with the price of winning is becoming bigoted misogynists like Hasan Piker, then I'll take that winning. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Thank you so much, chatter. Holy fucking hell. Holy fucking hell. Thank you. Holy shit. Third Way has so little search. It was so impossible to find. Thank you, Jesus Christ. Holy fucking hell. They only have 1,000 subscribers and I didn't think of they have 0 comments and 120 views. Holy shit. You are the queen. You are the king. Jesus Christ. I knew it existed and I could not find it for the life of me. You are a fucking queen. How did you find this? I've never failed to find something that I knew existed this hard for this long. It was like 20 minutes. I couldn't find it. And this chatter found it. Holy fucking hell. Which is why I was getting tilted, because I was saying 1 month ago, they were saying we need to go in unfriendly turf, an uncomfortable turf. And I could not find it. And here it is, 120 views. And then they were now saying, don't go on Hasan Piker. We have to throw Hasan Piker out. Holy shit. Do you see why this point is important? Do you see? I mean, it's not that important, but I was like getting so tilted because I couldn't find it. I normally could find my shit very quickly.
To get out and vote for Democrats. Well, hi there. We've made it this far. We've been talking a lot this weekend about persuasion and what voters want and need to hear from Democrats. It is one thing to persuade Democrats to get out and vote for Democrats. It's another thing altogether to persuade people in the middle to do that. Undecided voters, disaffected Republicans, people who aren't quite sold on the Democratic Party and maybe don't trust Democrats, maybe don't even like them. So next we're gonna talk about that, about how to talk to those middle of the road voters, how to reach them. And we brought together 2 people who've spent a lot of time thinking about this and who understand the MAGA movement from 2 different vantage points. Right next.
So I want you to understand something, chat. They're basically saying, here it is.
Candidates that are running in purple. Own it. Own that it's purple. Who cares if everybody outside is yelling at you for what you're doing inside? Because again, if you don't win, if you don't hold the office, if you don't win the office, then you don't matter. So if you want to please people that you'll never meet, that will never walk the streets that you legislate, all because we are subservient to this attention economy and noise. Congratulations, enjoy your fleeting moment on television, but you will never actually get to do something that matters. And the thing is—
by the way, oh my God, this is, by the way, this has 120 views because this is not intended for your eyes, chat. I'm so glad. Thank you, chatter. Thank you so much for bringing this. Oh my God, that chatter is a king. I could not find this for the life of me. Holy shit. Thank you, chatter. You are a king. You are a queen. I'm sorry for getting so frustrated. I could not find this shit. Holy hell. Thank you so much. I was like dying. I was like, the searches were giving me the same shit. I was like, no. Third Way had a speech. They had a video where they talk about how they need to go in uncomfortable spaces. So let me see if they say the word podcast. Yeah.
Media, as I mentioned, you host a podcast show that aims for some of those middle of the road voters. What do Democrats need to understand about the way the current—
Joe Walsh, by the way.
I'm exaggerating. Democrats need to wake up because Exaggerating. If Kamala Harris had gone on the Joe Rogan show and grabbed him by the lapels, just grabbed him by whatever and gone on and sat with Joe Rogan for 3 hours early in that campaign, I think she'd have won. I'm exaggerating. Democrats need to wake up, because Republicans have been here for a while, that independent media and podcasts in this whole brave new world we're in, that's where you reach, folks. That's where folks go. I'm an old fart. You're young.
So, okay, thank you, chatter, thank you! Holy shit, thank you! Okay. As I said, Third Way 1 month ago was saying, we need to go on Joe Rogan, we need to go in the independent media, we need to do alternative media. That's where the voters are. And then Hasan Piker starts to gain popularity. And Third Way immediately turns around and does the opposite. It says, actually, if you talk to Hasan Piker, if you go on independent media, then you should be canceled. You should be destroyed. You should have to answer a document of all the offensive things that Hasan Piker has said, taken out of context. So they go from, if Kamala Harris had gone on Joe Rogan and alternative media, she would have won, to, I can't believe Abdul Al-Sayed is going on alternative media. Hasan Piker and his fellow Jew haters to send a letter to El-Sayed demanding details about how closely you align with the most abhorrent views. That was from Third Way, a centrist group that previously demanded that Democrats draw a line in the sand and shun Hasan Piker and his fellow Jew haters. It's not even that important. My point was just Third Way are lying hypocrites, and the only thing they care about is attacking the left. They're so hypocritical. They'll say, go on Joe Rogan, because if you go on Joe Rogan, that's where the independent voters are. And then the moment somebody goes on Hasan, where there are disaffected voters, there's places where people aren't sold on the Democratic Party brand, persuadable voters, right? They're trying to cancel you immediately. That led Third Way, a centrist group that previously demanded that Democrats draw a line in the sand at Hasan Piker and his fellow Jew haters, to send a letter to El-Sayed demanding details about how closely you align with the most abhorrent views. Jonathan Greenblatt, the head of the Anti-Defamation League, said Piker reflected the dangerous normalization of anti-Semitism in our politics. Politico then asked a number of possible 2028 Democratic hopefuls whether they would appear on Piker's show. Governor Gavin Newsom and Rahm Emanuel said they would. Representative Ro Khanna and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez already had. Senator Cory Booker, Ruben Gallego, and Alyssa Slockett said they wouldn't. Mike needs calories. He's hangry. I'm not hangry. No, and you don't have to don't tell Vio to feed me. That's kind of weird. I think there's rather a lot wrapped up in this controversy, so let's take it piece by piece. Is Piker a Jew hater? And the way Third Way alleges. In an interview with writer Aaron Rugenberg, Piker addressed some of his worst comments. I find some of his answers compelling and others less so. The comparison of liberal Zionists to Nazis, for instance, is repugnant and not much improved by Piker clarifying that he opposes ethno-states. What made the Nazis notable wasn't their support for an ethno-states. Ethno-states are common. Oh, what's an ethno-state? Please, what are the ethno-states? What ethno-states are common right now? Please tell me, what are the ethno-states that you're thinking of? Source? Japan is not an ethno-state in the way that Israel is. Israel denies all Palestinians the right to convert to Judaism. Israel denies interracial marriage between Palestinians and Israelis. If you are a Arab Muslim from the East Jerusalem, you're not allowed to marry an Israeli citizen and move to Israel. Can you show me where Japan denies people the right to move to Japan, even if they marry Japanese citizens? You could say that there is a nation state around Japanese ethnicity. But that's not an ethno-state necessarily. An ethno-state is a place where only one ethnicity has full citizenship. That's not true of Japan. That's not true of China. And that's not true of South Korea. So what are you talking about? What ethno-state are you talking about exactly? There's 3 real-world ethno-states: Israel, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar. Oh, by the way, are we pouring hundreds of billions of dollars to prop up Myanmar? What made the Nazis notable was their effort to exterminate the Jewish people, and Piker's assertion that his opposition to all reactionary ideology is hard to square with his admiration for Hezbollah. He doesn't admire Hezbollah. He doesn't admire Hezbollah. He said their flag was sick, which is different. Also, liberal Zionists in Israel want to ethnically cleanse the Palestinian people. There is no liberal Zionism. That's the point. Zionism is the idea of ethnic supremacy in Israel. That's what Zionism is. That's why they say Jewish state, because they want to maintain a demographic majority. and it's racist, and it's in opposition to liberalism, just like it's worse than apartheid. It's worse than Jim Crow because they're actively exterminating and dispossessing people right now. Palestinians, Lebanese, Syrians are being dispossessed based on their religion and their ethnicity. That's not common. And even if it's happening in other places in the world, and it is the United States directly funding it with hundreds of billions of dollars? Is the United States vetoing resolutions of the Security Council condemning it? Is the United States targeting members of the International Criminal Court to try to stop them from holding these people accountable? No, that's what makes Israel special, is the United States is there fighting a war in Iran for Israel. That's why it's not problematic to say liberal Zionism is like being a liberal Nazi, because if you call yourself a liberal but you support the ethnic cleansing of Jews from Germany, then you are in all intents and purposes a Nazi in the ways that matter. But to focus only on those comments is to miss much else that Piker has said and believes. He has also said, from pogroms to the Holocaust, Jews have always been singled out by those in power as a scapegoat for the instability and economic volatility that people in power caused. A resilient, nascent anti-Semitism is a constant threat. He called anti-Semitism gross, immoral, and a hate crime. He promoted John Ossoff, a Democratic senator from Georgia who is Jewish, as a 2028 presidential possibility. In previous primaries, Piker supported Bernie Sanders, who's also Jewish. It's an unusual form of Jew hatred that calls out anti-Semitism and promotes Jewish Americans for the presidency. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call complete and total Hasan Piker victory. This is Ezra Klein bending the knee to Hasan Piker. And I just want to say, thank God, because this is basic common sense. This is basic common sense. And yet, you never see that. You never see basic common sense on the New York Times opinion page. You just don't. And so seeing that, hey, he supports multiple Jewish politicians and says anti-Semitism is bad, he's probably not an anti-Semite. That kind of common sense is impossible to find. I have deep disagreements with Piker, but he isn't a Jew hater. He's an anti-Zionist. And there, I think, the real stakes of this fight come into view. And here's the reason. The reason why they are attacking Hasan Piker is because the American people are becoming anti-Zionist. And the goal of people like Ezra Klein, the goal of people like Mallory McMorrow, is to confuse who the actual anti-Zionists are. Somebody like AOC, somebody like Zoran, somebody like Abdul El-Sayed, somebody like Summer Lee, is to confuse you between those people and people like Mallory McMorrow or Elizabeth Warren or Ezra Klein. They want you to be confused about who actually opposes Israel so that they can sneak in Israel's supporters into power. They're trying to make anti-Zionism to be a risky position that you cannot hold authentically without being attacked. That is the goal. They understand that the voters are with us on the policy, but that policy is implemented by individuals in power. And this is the problem that a lot of left-wingers misunderstand, is that policy doesn't just happen because a majority or even an overwhelming majority of people support it. What policy happens when the political levers are positioned via leverage in order to pass the policy. And that includes having individuals who are part of the movement or pressured by the movement in power to push the buttons. You understand? That we actually have to have politicians that are tribunes of our movement in power to do the thing. And that is what the elites understand. And that is how they try to manipulate you. They try to manipulate you into not understanding that persuasion of the masses is only one step. It is not how you actually get things accomplished. You have to seize the power of the state. State power is the power that effectuates change. We are living through a rupture of both the meaning and the reality of Israel. Gallup poll from February found for the first time that more Americans sympathize with Palestinians than with the Israelis. This is an important first step. But what the Zionists understand is that what the American people believe is different than what their politicians enact. That has been the insight of the right for the last 50 years, is that the American people could believe in unions. The American people could want the minimum wage to increase. The American people could believe in universal health care. The American people could believe in green energy. The American people could believe in all sorts of things, from peace to feeding the hungry and clothing the sick and housing the homeless. But unless they have power, those beliefs are just Pixie dust. Among Democrats, the gap was overwhelming, with 65% who sympathize more with the Palestinians and 17% with the Israelis. The difference, as I have argued, is largely generational. Older Americans view the Israelis more sympathetically, but among Americans aged 18 to 34, 53% sided with Palestinians and 23% with Israelis. This is new. Before 2023, young people and Democrats were more likely to side with the Israelis. By the way, who was polling that, do you think? Just think about that for a second. Who was polling before 2023? Do you side more with Israel or with Palestinians? Who the fuck do you think was polling that? And why were they polling that? The answer, of course, is virulent Zionist spies who understand that controlling the American government and the opinions of Americans is key to keeping their settler colonial genocide going. October 7th was just a crystallization of the contradictions of the marginalization of Palestinians. But Zionists have been focused on controlling American public opinion and power for decades and decades. And it's only now, in light of the open genocide, that the American people have changed their position. This is not the result of an international psyop or a profusion of memes. The Israel that young people know is not the Israel that older people remember. Because the Israel that older people remember was a lie. It was a media construction. It was propaganda. It's because the powers that be had control over mainstream media. They had control over, they gate-kept anyone who was pro-Palestinian from office. They gate-kept anybody who was pro-Palestinian from media positions. This is something that former president said on Democracy Now! Back in 2007.
The word apartheid is exactly accurate. You know, this is an area that's occupied by two powers. They're now completely separated. The Palestinians can't even ride on the same roads that the Israelis have created or built in Palestinian territory. The Israelis never see a Palestinian except their Israeli soldiers. The Palestinians never see an Israeli except at a distance, except the Israeli soldiers. So within Palestinian territory, they're absolutely and totally separated, much worse than they were in South Africa, by the way. And the other thing is, the other definition of apartheid is one side dominates the other, and the Israelis completely dominate the life of the Palestinian people.
Why don't Americans know what you have seen?
Americans don't want to know, and many Israelis don't want to know what is going on inside Palestine. It's a terrible human rights persecution that is far transcends what any outsider would imagine. And there are powerful political forces in America that prevents any objective analysis of the problem in the Holy Land. I think it's accurate to say that not a single member of Congress with whom I'm familiar would possibly speak out and call for Israel to withdraw to their legal boundaries or to publicize the plight of the Palestinians, or even to call publicly and repeatedly for good faith peace talks. There hadn't been a day of peace talks now in more than 7 years. So this is a taboo subject, and I would say that if any member of Congress did speak out, as I've just described, they would probably not be back into Congress the next term. The word apartheid.
So that was 2007, former President Jimmy Carter talking about the reality of apartheid on Democracy Now! And that is why you're seeing such angst against Hasan or myself or anybody who is anti-genocide, pro-Palestinian, because their ability. And notice that Jimmy Carter talked about how if a congressperson spoke out, they would not be in Congress the next term. Because why? AIPAC, foreign lobby groups, spies would pour tens of millions of dollars into their campaign to unseat them. And everybody would know why they got unseated. They spoke out against Israel. And the politicians, they have self-preservation. But now that is changing. Now we have alternative media. Now the trail that was blazed by places like Democracy Now! And Amy Goodman are now flowering in places like Hasan Stream, My Stream, and many of the other places, you know, Majority Report, etc. Because of these places existing, because people could actually talk about this stuff without being gatekept. I'm gatekept out of mainstream media. The only reason Hasan is not gatekept is because he's so large and is so influential with young people that you can't ignore him. But they tried to gatekeep him. They're trying to gatekeep him by smearing him. They're trying to lessen his influence by smearing him in the places they do control, namely CNN, namely mainstream media. But they'll never bring me on one of these shows, right? Because he's too big. I'm small enough and isolated enough that, sure, I have influence with my people. Yes, I could help and I could assist in organizing, but I am gatekept. Why am I gatekept? Well, because I'm not large enough in order to be unignorable. Hasan is. And that's why I, by the way, back up and support Hasan so vociferously. And I want you to do the same. I back him up because he's too big to be ignored. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Gandhi. Exactly. And it's, by the way, we've won the argument. 66% of younger Democrats say an AIPAC endorsement makes them less likely to support a candidate. 66% of Jews, American Jews, oppose AIPAC spending in Democratic primaries. It's fucking over. The argument has been lost even with American Jews. Israel responded to the savagery of October 7th by flattening Gaza in a brutal campaign that killed at least 70,000 Gazans, taking control of more than half the territory and herding Gazans, more than 2 million people, into the remainder. Life there remains hellish. Israel has made hopes for a two-state solution fanciful by slicing the West Bank up into Israeli settlements and abetting constant settler violence and keeping a boot on the throat of the Palestinian Authority. It's even worse than that. And again, Ezra Klein is lying by omission here. This is why I go after Ezra Klein so viciously. Benjamin Netanyahu, the longest-serving prime minister of Israel, says that he has done everything he can to sabotage the two-state solution. There is no pro-two-state solution party in Israel that has any chance at power. The Israelis themselves reject the two-state solution. It's not just, oh, conditions are bad for the two-state solution. Israelis themselves reject the idea of a Palestinian state in toto. That's why liberal Zionism is a delusion. It used the Iran war as an opportunity to launch an invasion of Lebanon, displacing more than 1 million people and announcing that as many as 600,000 won't be allowed to return to their homes until Israel decides otherwise. The Knesset just voted to legalize hanging as a punishment for Palestinians who were convicted of killing Israelis in terrorist attacks. By the way, that is a racialized death penalty. That's Nazi shit. It's one thing to have a death penalty. In general, I oppose the death penalty, except for social murderers and war criminals. But it's quite another, like, you know, if you say, oh, if somebody commits first-degree murder, they face the death penalty. Imagine if this is what that law would be like in America. Imagine there was a law in America that said there's no death penalty in America except if black people murder a white person. If a black person murders a white person, well, then there's the death penalty. But if a white person murders a black person, no death penalty. Imagine that law. That's the law in Israel. What do you call that? What the fuck do you call that? Third way suggests you could identify Jew haters by their use of loaded words taught in social justice seminars: apartheid, genocide, settler colonialism. If that is the test, then a large number of American Jews now fail it. Israel, as it is behaving today and as is constructing itself for tomorrow, is incompatible with any normal understanding of liberal values. There will be no Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River, Benjamin Netanyahu has said. For 4 years, oh, okay, never mind. I want to give mea culpa again to Ezra Klein. Mea culpa again. For years, I have prevented the creation of that terror state against tremendous pressure, both domestic and from abroad. We have done this with determination and with astute statesmanship. Moreover, we have doubled the Jewish settlement in Judea and Samaria, and we will continue on this path. They don't even call it the West Bank because they're so focused on settler colonialism. Anti-Zionism is rising as a response to what Israel is doing. It will simply not be possible to treat it as a marginal viewpoint that could be shamed or shunned into invisibility. And this is where Ezra Klein both is right and is wrong. Israel is focused on creating fascism in defense of Israel. Israel wants to destroy the First Amendment and force you by state coercion to support Israel. That's the reality. They want to create fascism in order to defend their own fascist project in America. That is their project. They want to make organizing against Israel a crime in America. They want you to get fired from your job. They want you to be expelled from a college. They want you to be unable to post on social media. If you post something anti-Israel, they want to destroy your life. That is what they are trying to do. That's why Donald Trump is in alignment with them, because Donald Trump wants to do the same thing to anybody who criticizes him. Here, Josh Gottheimer. French lawmakers set to push bill criminalizing speech on Israel with penalties of up to 5 years in prison. For anyone who thinks it can't happen here, there's a bill in Congress led by Rep. Lawler and Rep. Gottheimer that carries a 20-year prison sentence for people who boycott Israel, with 24 members of Congress co-sponsoring. And there are multiple Democrats who co-sponsor it. Jared Moskowitz, by the way, chat. Jared Moskowitz, he's the guy who's running against Oliver Larkin. Oliver Larkin is running. If you guys don't know who Oliver Larkin is, YouTube. Oliver Larkin is running for, and I did an interview of him. It's on my YouTube. You can check it out. He's running. He's the first nationally endorsed DSA candidate for Congress. It's a blue seat represented by the 200th most left-wing member of the Democratic Party, meaning the most pro-Zionist member of Congress. We could win this seat. Guys, remember, Peepo smile. Peepo smile. Remember that. Yes, anti-Semitism often cloaks itself in anti-Zionism, so don't do the anti-Semites work for them. If you keep telling people they oppose the Jewish state, then they must hate Jewish people, eventually they will believe you. Here's the reality, and this is the uncomfortable statement, and I'm going to say it. A lot of mainstream Jewish institutions in America are virulently Zionist, and they hold that position. And so that is the contradiction that we don't speak about, which is like, hey, a lot of mainstream Jewish religious organizations in America say that if you oppose Israel, you're an anti-Semite, and that Zionism is a necessary prerequisite of Jewishness. Frequently, synagogues are used to sell stolen land from the West Bank. So there is a connection with the Jewish diaspora in America and promoting the crimes that are taking place in the West Bank. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is unacceptable. And there needs to be a reckoning within the Jewish community. Now, I'm not Jewish, so I can't impose that. But more and more, there is a self-marginalization that is taking place because the vast majority of Jewish people do not believe that in America. The impulse, especially young people, the impulse to cut off those with whom we disagree reaches far beyond Piker or the Israeli-Palestinian debate. It sits at the heart of cancellation as a political tactic. It relies on a belief that the power of gatekeepers that might have been true at an earlier age, but no longer reflects the way attention is earned and held. Tucker Carlson was ejected from Fox News and grew stronger on X and YouTube. Nick Fuentes was banned from major social media platforms and gathered strength in the shadows. Trump went from being banned by every major social media platform to retaking the presidency. But it's not just that cancellation has failed to silence those it targeted, it also weakened those who used it. The Democratic Party and the progressive movement was ill-served by the belief that it could decide the boundaries of acceptable debate. In narrowing who it could talk to, it limited who it could hear it and who it would be heard by. The problem with this Ezra Klein, and this is another problem that Ezra Klein has. Thank you, Platinum Fubu. The Democratic Party does not go in these spaces because they can't handle debate. Alyssa Slotkin went on to Breaking Points and she got fucking humiliated. And it went viral because she couldn't debate her points. She couldn't defend her positions. That's why they're trying to prevent these spaces, because you can't defend the Democratic Party status quo through any kind of critical analysis. I haven't been on Joe Rogan's show, but I have been on some of the shows in that broader universe, like Andrew Schultz Flagrant and Lex Friedman's podcast. I was surprised by how frustrated the hosts were about their inability to book Democrats in 2024. They had said things the broader progressive universe disliked or had conversations with people who were anathema to the left. So Democrats largely avoided these podcasts, ceding them to the Trump campaign. That's not why. It's not the progressive left. It's you, Ezra. It's you. It's people like you. That's the lie. Now, not Ezra Klein. He said go on Joe Rogan. In his defense, Ezra Klein said go on Joe Rogan. But it was the Democratic Party establishment who was against it. Here we go. On Saturday, the progressive group Move On called on Sanders to apologize and stop elevating this endorsement. Again, that was the professional managerial class Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris types. Less than an hour later, former Vice President Joe Biden appeared to enter the fray. Let's be clear. Transgender equality is the civil rights issue of our time, Biden tweeted. There's no room for compromise when it comes to basic human rights. 4 years later, Kamala Harris was saying we should compromise basic human rights. I mean, it's just, what can you even say? This was not only bad politics. Oh, by the way, who did Move On endorse in 2020? Move On did not endorse in the 2020 presidential primary campaign. What a fucking joke. What a pathetic fucking joke. Can you imagine being an activist organization and not having a voice in the presidential primary? What a fucking joke. This was not only bad politics, but also bad democratic practice. That's because the centrist Democrats hate democracy. Centrists hate democracy. Centrists are the most hostile to democracy, not extremists. And here's the poll. Here's the United States. Look at how many people in the centrists hate democracy. Percentage of people who say, hold on. Percentage of people who say democracy is a very good political system. In America, look how low. 33% of centrists say democracy is a good political system. Centrists hate democracy. This shows that these shows had come from nowhere and gained millions of loyal listeners. They'd earned their viewerships by voicing something that made millions of Americans feel seen, heard, or at least interested. In avoiding these spaces, Democrats avoided contact with the kinds of voters they otherwise claimed to represent. This is the mistake Democrats often make when they talk about what they did wrong in 2024. They realize now that they should try to talk to people who listen to these shows. They are less likely to realize that they should listen to the people who talk on these shows. Beneath this is an important principle. Conversation is not a reward to be bestowed on those with whom we agree. It's a necessary habit in democracy. Democratic Party hates democracy. That's why they had superdelegates. That's why all the superdelegates endorsed Hillary Clinton before a single primary vote was cast in 2016. They hate democracy. That's why there was no Democratic primary in 2024 and they selected Kamala Harris. I called for Joe Biden to drop out very early in 2023. I said the polls are clear. He cannot win. Joe Biden drop out. In fact, you want to see what I was saying? Again, if you want to understand whose analysis is best, just look at what they were saying. Double hater. Why did it, what? Okay, what the fuck? Why is it deleting this post? What the fuck? Weird. I said, as a double hater, I have a suggestion. He should drop out. He should be replaced by a candidate. I don't know. Why was my, okay, what the fuck was going on? Okay. Dan Pfeiffer of Pod Save America said this is November 5th, 2023. So Joe Biden could have dropped out and we had a robust primary. The New York Times poll was bad. There's no sugarcoating it. But instead of panicking or naively unskewing the poll, we should start doing the work of rebuilding the anti-MAGA majority. Here's one place to start. And here it is. Trump was up 10 in Nevada, 5 in Arizona, 4 in Pennsylvania, 5 in Michigan, and 6 in Georgia. And Biden was up 2 in Wisconsin. It got worse from here. Kamala Harris went on to lose every swing state. And my response is, as a double hater, I have a suggestion. He should drop out. He should be replaced by a candidate that will oppose Israel's genocide, support actual court reform to unpack the Supreme Court, and will promise real policy outcomes that young people demand. November 5th, 2023. Imagine if the Democratic Party had listened to me and we had a robust Democratic primary in 2024. Donald Trump would not have stood a chance. So the Democratic Party, in my lifetime, has been more anti-democratic than they've been democratic. And in 2020, when Bernie Sanders had the support of the youth, what did they say in the New York Times? Dems willing to risk party damage to stop Bernie. Democratic leaders were willing to risk party damage to stop Bernie Sanders. Interviews with dozens of Democratic Party officials, including 93 superdelegates, found overwhelming opposition to handing Mr. Sanders the nomination if he fell short of the majority of delegates. Now, typically, in previous primaries, when a candidate could no longer have a path to the nomination, they would drop out. But in 2020, all the primary candidates were saying, I'm going to stay in, even though I can't win, so that we could have a contested primary convention, a contested DNC, and then pick someone else. So we were going to have 10 candidates in the election. Bernie Sanders gets the plurality of delegates, and I'm going to stay in to pick someone else. That was Kamala Harris's. That was Elizabeth Warren. That was what they were openly saying. And they said, I don't care if the Democratic Party is damaged. I'm going to stop Bernie. Does that sound like democracy to you? They call you a wrecker because you looked at the evidence and suggested a viable solution. They call me a wrecker because they're stupid and they don't understand the political possibility is far wider than you could ever imagine. We don't have to live like this. We don't have to live in accepting fucking garbage candidates. We don't have to live like that. We can pick people that are good. And when we do, we win. And when they win, they are effective. You don't have to live in this shitty world that we are in. And the number one impediment to that is you, your belief, your pessimism, your mindless cynicism. That is why we fail, because you believe we can't win. And that's what drives me up a fucking wall. We can win. We should win. And if we did win, we could change the world. It's not that hard. It really isn't. Your belief is the number one impediment. They are few. We are the many. The point is not to find agreement as much as to deepen understanding. To talk with others is to believe in the possibility of change, theirs and your own. Whether you like everything that someone has said should be severed from the question of whether that person is worth talking to. The space for such conversations was once wider. That's a total lie. But okay, let's fantasize about the boomer past. Because William F. Buckley had a show called Firing Line, where he occasionally got his ass beat, and then he never invited the left-wingers on again. The space for such conversations was once wider. In 1968, William F. Buckley Jr., the arch-conservative founder of National Review, hosted Eldridge Cleaver, the Minister of Information for the Black Panthers, on Firing Line. Guys, notice how the arch-conservative has the television show and the left-winger gets invited once? That's the structural reality that centrist Democrats like Ezra Klein want us to live in, where the far-right people have the show and we get occasionally invited on once. That's what they hate about Hasan. They hate a left-winger having the show. Ilhan Omar attacks Hasan. Hate to break it to Hasan the Hun and Adam Friedland, but Kaya is my favorite. Oh my God. Oh my God. Kaya is such a love bug. Holy crap. So jealous. I'm jealous of having a pup. I miss my pup. I miss my pup. Anyway, back. Neither man was there to endorse the other's politics. I should like to begin by asking Mr. Cleaver whether he finds it consistent with his ideology to encourage the assassination of Mr. Richard Nixon, Buckley said. Oh, boo-hoo, assassination, boo-hoo. Meanwhile, America engages in vile assassinations all over the world. We're doing assassination attacks on fucking police officers in the West Bank and Gaza Strip and saying they're Hamas. We're bombing their homes with their children. And we're belly aching about crying about assassination comments about the most powerful people on the planet. Shut the fuck up. Stop whining. Cleaver's answer: I would say that if Richard Nixon was assassinated, it would only result in having another pig in line who would probably need to be assassinated. Buckley later hosted Cleaver at his home. It was a different time, but it created a lasting artifact. The interview has hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube and remains riveting to watch. Are there people I wouldn't have on my show or shows I wouldn't go on? Sure. My show is one of those. I'm one of those examples, chat. Those judgments for me are more about what I think will be productive rather than who I think can be included. That's a fucking lie. Similarly, I wouldn't judge Booker or Gallego or Slotkin for avoiding Piker's show. They're busy people, and they may not be how they want to spend their time. This is why Ezra Klein is so fucking useless. Assad Piker has billions of views on YouTube. He has 500 million hours watched on his Twitch channel. And 1 billion views is just his channel, not the myriad other fan channels. What a fucking joke, dude. More people watched Assad Piker's live stream on election day. Like, goddamn, what a joke. Slotkin did a curated event with 20 people and it ended up with 2 Hasanabi heads who grilled her. Yes, because young people that are interested in politics know who Hasan Piker is. Not going on Hasan Piker is abdicating the entire field. But there's something strange about aspiring to lead the country's left-wing coalition and elevating the avoidance of prominent leftists to a matter of principle. That's all the more true now as attention isn't bestowed on the chosen few by television networks and newspaper editors. It's won or lost in ferocious marketplace that rewards outrage and controversy. And that's exactly the point. They are, and this is what, by the way, chat, this is what the chorus creators are about. What they're trying to do is re-engineer access politics again. They want to show, you know, online content creators, and they want to be like, if you suck off the Democratic Party's most motionless dweebs, we will give you the Barack Obama interview. We will give you the Michelle Obama interview. We'll have senators and congresspeople come on your show, right? We'll get you on MSNBC for media hits, right? As long as you suck off and you act like a puppet of the Democratic Party, they'll boost your channel and they'll pour millions of dollars into you, both directly and through advertising and sponsored views. So if you are a motionless, talentless hack, just using whatever minuscule platform you have as a Democratic Party propaganda network, they will give you access. They will give you money. That's why they hate me. That's why they hate Hasan. That's why they hate the Majority Report. Because these are spaces that actually have so many fans and so much support that we support ourselves. That we have organic motion. I haven't spent $1 advertising myself. Not $1. And that's why you see those chorus creators spending their time going after Hasan, going after me, slandering Hasan. Why? Because they hate the fact that we have an organic following. Here's Obama on Brian Tyler Cohen. Get himself a nice 6 million view video. Do you think Barack Obama would go on Hasan's stream for 47 minutes? If not, why not? Jimmy Carter went on Democracy Now! Why the fuck is Obama not willing to go on challenging places? Something to consider. This is a reward for being, the reward for being a propaganda shill for the Democratic Party. And look at this. Trump, slap, Trump. Every fucking video is Trump. Melania, Trump. I mean, like, there's nothing else to say. There's nothing else to say but just Trump slop. Every fucking video is Trump slop. The winners of the attention wars today are typically people who said some outrageous things in the past or are still saying them in the present. When you're dealing with podcasters or streamers who talk unstructured and unrehearsed for hours each week, if not every day, there's going to be so much said that it's almost inevitable that a dossier of dumb statements can be appiled. Thank you, Ezra Klein. I appreciate you saying that. The problem is there's not that many of those with me. My big things that the people say about me is, one, I said Joe Biden is going to lose to Donald Trump. He's a terrible candidate. I'm glad Kamala Harris didn't win. I said that as an offhanded comment about because she was saying something like pro-Israel in 2025, and I got so worked up. I said, thank God she fucking lost. I hate her. And that's the kind of shit that they would bring. Also, when I was reacting lazily to the Benjamin Netanyahu speech to the United Nations, and he was trying to say Jewishness, like Jewish identity is one unified identity surrounding Israel. And I said that such an idea would be demonic. That would be a demonic ethnicity. That was a dumb fucking comment I made. But after 7 years, that's about it. I was cringe on someone else's stream for like 2 minutes 7 years ago. That's the other thing. People have to lie about that context. Like, there's really nothing. Have you seen the TMZ and DC drama? Everyone is acting if they're not a front for Israel to expose blackmail. They already have to replace congressperson they don't like with AIPAC shills. People are cheering for this dog. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh yeah, I saw that, chat. I saw this. That's really sad, but we're almost done. We're almost done with the Ezra Klein bending the knee. Mike, we don't have to imagine it. The Israeli death penalty law is word for word out of a 1941 Nazi decree. The death penalty shall be imposed on any Pole or Jew if he commits an act of violence against a German on account of his being German blood. What the fuck? TMZ is going political and trying to take down progressives? Wait, what? Tell me more. To write these people out of acceptable political discourse is to back yourself into a shrinking, sanitized corner of the public sphere. Booker admitted on Pod Save America that when he said he would never go on Piker's show, he had never heard of Piker. He was lying. He was fucking lying, chat. Cory Booker is a New Jersey senator. He knows Hasan Piker and Zohran Mamdani were in. That was a major story in the Cuomo attacks on Zohran. They were like, you're friends with an influencer who said America deserved 9/11. Cory Booker was lying through his fucking teeth. Anybody who's in politics who claims not to know who Hasan is lying. I want you guys to understand this. Anybody who is in politics as a politician who claims not to know who Hasan is fucking lying. No exceptions. His communication director had read him a list of the 4 or 5 worst things Piker had said, and Booker used that as a basis for his response. Booker got piled on for that admission, but I appreciated the honesty. He was lying through his fucking teeth. That is, in practice, a version of how many of us make our judgments. Yeah, we should stop doing that. Algorithmic media is an engine of motivated decontextualization. We see other people in snippets that serve the agendas of those who cut them. We are fed 30-second clips shorn from multi-hour streams, 2-second quotes ripped from long conversations, old comments that obscure subsequent change. We have to be careful about being lulled into believing these shards represent anyone's whole person. Very thoughtful, and I agree with this, by the way. Thank you, Ezra. That's a good point. We should not be afraid of finding out who these people are, of seeking to change them, or by allowing ourselves to be changed by them. Very good faith comment. Again, I don't like Ezra Klein because I've read him a lot. But this is a very thoughtful paragraph that I wish more people would listen to. All right, let's read some of the comments. Let's sort by, oh, they closed the comment section? And you can't sort by top? What the fuck? Okay, they were talking about how Israel has gone insane. That's good. Democrats do not need a liberal Joe Rogan. They need a Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Yeah, her name is AOC. FDR to AOC. It's also a 3-letter name. It's pretty easy to remember. It's not complicated. My only worry about AOC is that she's not confident enough. That's my biggest criticism of AOC, is she's not confident enough. And I want her to be louder and prouder and bolder and less conciliatory. Remember when Bernie Sanders conducted a town hall meeting on Fox News when running for the presidency? Absolutely fearless, and he earned a lot of respect from both sides of the aisle. Yeah, I know. A lot of liberals like Rogan. Sanders went on his show. Rogan voted for Bernie. The fact that us left do not understand this is stunning. It's not left. That's the lie. That's the lie. It was not left. It was centrist Democrats doing fake wokeism to use it to attack the left. You still see it on places like TikTok, where people will be like, leftists only care about class. They don't care about race. And that's just a blatant lie. Anti-racism is a communist and a socialist idea. And if you go and look at the people that were protesting segregation, they said race mixing is communism. Look at this. And they were right. They were fucking right. They're right. Race mixing is socialism. Oh my God, I swear to God. Did I get the image? Jesus. Race mixing is communism. Stop the race mixing. March of the Antichrist. Race mixing is communism. Class is inextricably intertwined with every other political issue, including race. You cannot care about one without caring about the other. Racism was created for capitalism to exist. Racism is new. It is a modern concept. It was created in the late 15th, early 16th century in order to facilitate what we call primitive accumulation, which was the hyper exploitation of marginalized workers who are otherized by concepts, of being unchristian or unhuman, so that they could justify complete and total exploitation with no regard to their flourishing or their lives. And that is how capitalism and the international system of trade gained the capital necessary to break out of feudalist society, because feudal society was in large part stagnant or in equilibrium. It didn't have a large surplus that you needed in order to form capital. Capital was formed because of racism. Racism went hand in hand and continues to go hand in hand with capitalism. We have populations that are hyper exploited and marginalized others, whether it is illegal immigrants that work as agricultural workers, whether it is the artisanal child miners in the Congo. We continue to otherize people based on nationality, based on race, so that we can hyper exploit them. Continues to this day. And the only way, by the way, the most effective way to fight racism, the only effective policy that we have found to close racial and gender wage gaps is unionization. Unionization is the only policy that has effectively closed racial and gender wage and wealth gaps. So that is a left-wing policy. You could say a class-conscious or class-first policy, but the effect is actually achieving a racial equality. That is something that people don't want you to know. All right, chat. Sorry for taking so long to get over that, and I'm sorry for having a temper tantrum because I couldn't find that third wave video. And the chatter, who is the chatter that found that? Who is the chatter that found the 100-view third wave video I couldn't find? That was such a legendary find. I want to gift them like 6 months of subs because I was having a crash out because I couldn't find this. I was having a crash out because I couldn't find this. And how could I at 120 views? Because Third Way has absolutely no motion. By the way, this organization gets tens of millions of dollars a year, and they have they post videos consistently, and they get dozens of views. No one likes this type of politics. Look how often they're on CNN. Bloomberg, CNN, Fox, Bloomberg, CNN, Fox, Bloomberg, CNN, Fox. These people have no fucking motion. These are the people telling you. I swear to God, if I'm getting poop socked. That is the Third Way meeting, by the way. Okay. Whew. All right, temper tantrum over. Let's move on to the Iran war. Hopefully my editors can rip me having a temper tantrum for 15 minutes out of the fucking edit. Oh, you get poop sock too? Oh, it's very rare. Mostly people try to know me. What is third way? Did it exist before Bill Clinton, or is it named after Bill Clinton's political ideology? It's named after Bill Clinton's. Okay, so basically, just so you have like a quick explanation of what third way is. After Ronald Reagan came into power, and then George H.W. Bush won election as his vice president, the Democratic Party decided to abandon totally and completely the working class and trade unions and focus on getting corporate money and support. And that's what Bill Clinton represented. He called it was the DLC Clinton, called the Democratic Leadership Council. And they basically, the DLC was focused on pushing the Democrats to the right, both on military and domestic policy. The DLC stated it seeks to define and galvanize popular support for a new public philosophy built on progressive ideals, mainstream values, innovative, non-bureaucratic, market-based solution, including welfare reform. So that's what that was. All right, let's move on, and let's move on to something that's based. South Korea's left-wing president, the first left-leaning president that South Korea has had in decades, is going against Israel.
Turning now to Korea and to the Asian economies. As I said at the end of our interview with Rory, something very interesting is happening in Asia, a full, basically diplomatic break between Korea and Israel. Let's go ahead and put this up here on the screen. Seemingly out of nowhere, the president of Korea quote tweeted a video which said IDF soldiers tortured a Palestinian kid and threw him off a roof. They call themselves the most moral army. The president, again, literally out of nowhere, just says, I need to look into whether this is true. And if so, what measures have been taken? The forced comfort women issue that we are raising is in no different than the Jewish massacre or wartime killing. So for those who aren't aware in Korean history, comfort women was a major issue and remains a major one for the Korean people for Japanese treatment of Korean women and effective like enslavement into sex slavery during the Second World War. It remains like one of the hottest issues between the two countries and has caused like major even diplomatic problems between them. But clearly they have a very raw wound from the Second World War, and they're comparing the treatment and subjugation of Palestinians to how Israel is treating them. Now, the question though is that this video is from 2024. So why now? I think we know why, because their economy has just been decimated, and the president of South Korea is using, again, one of the most like sensitive issues in South Korean society to try to turn the people against Israel on this moral ground. Okay, so how does the Israeli Foreign Ministry respond? Let's put this up here on the screen. The remarks by the president of Korea, including this trivialization of the massacre of Jews on the eve of the Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, are unacceptable and warrant strong condemnation. President Lee, for some strange reason, chose to dig up a story from 2024 and to cite a fake account that falsely represented it as a current event. This account, remember, they're not denying any of this, okay? Let's say,
exactly.
Right? This account is notorious for spreading anti-Israeli disinformation and falsehood about Israel. The event discussed occurred during an operation against terrorists at a time when Israeli soldiers were facing direct and immediate threats to their lives. The event was thoroughly investigated and addressed 2 years ago. Yet, we have not heard a single word from the president about the terrorists who were at the center of this event, nor have we heard a word from the president regarding the recent Iranian and Hezbollah military attacks against Israeli civilians. Mr. President, it is always better to check before reposting. Okay, so again,
seems
no
like
denial.
A confirmation of the veracity of the video.
No denial. Right, but this is
basically, chat. In South Korea, they tried to have a coup by their like far-right Trump-supporting president, and the kind of like I would call it, they have a far-right party in Korea and they have a centrist party, and the centrist party had their most like left-leaning leader of all time, and he just won. He won last year, and they're prosecuting the coup president for like treason. So for the like first time ever, South Korea is kind of having a center left, maybe, president who believes in peace and reconciliation with North Korea and China, and is going after the right hard.
But why now? Well, again, they're fed up. They can't do this to Trump yet. They may get there if the blockade happens. But with Israel, who they see as one of the precipitators of this conflict, they're like, oh, yeah, no, we're done with you. And we're just going to, and this is a radical shift. They've had relations for many years. It hasn't necessarily always been on the best terms. But, you know, at the end of the day, Korea, they don't care that much about Israel. They're a major U.S. ally. So if a U.S. wants to...
Again, they don't care that much about Israel, except now Israel is cutting off the Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the key sources of South Korea's energy. So South Korea's economy is now being fucking destroyed by Israel's warmongering, and they've had enough because, again, they're being affected.
Cozy up to Israel, so be it. It is what it is. But now their entire population, remember what, you think we're a phone addicted society? They're very similar. They're all on social media. They have TikTok and all these other things in South Korea. So they've been watching the same Palestinian videos. So they've got the population. But then you have this war, which has plunged them into economic crises and chaos. Remember, right before all of this, Korea was about to dispatch its own special envoy. Let's put D4 up there on the screen. Their own special envoy appointed by their foreign minister directly to Iran to have bilateral talks with Iran. And basically, I mean, they didn't admit it, but I think they were...
How is someone left and also liberal? What are you trying to say?
Just going to pay the toll to get all of their oil out of the Straits of Hormuz. They didn't care at this...
The South Korean president was like a trade unionist. So, and that's was suppressed heavily in South Korea.
Point, their economy is so deeply reliant. Well, similarly, again, they're furious with Israel for their role in this war, and so they've actually ratcheted up this diplomatic incident. Let's put D3 up there on the screen. This is in response to Israel's response. It's disappointing that you don't even once reflect on the criticisms from people around the world who are suffering and struggling due to your relentless anti-human rights and anti-international law actions. When I am in pain, others feel that pain just as deeply. It's only natural to feel sorry if someone else is suffering because of my needs. It makes me deeply uncomfortable to watch this immense pain and national hardship suddenly befalling our innocent citizens out of the blue like a bolt from the blue. For the sake of universal human rights and the national interests of the Republic of Korea, I must work harder to find things I can do. Israel cannot tolerate President Lee's remark that wartime killings equal Jewish massacre. I mean, this, again, is extraordinary stuff from the president of South Korea, a allied nation whose entire economy was thrown into full chaos. They were already exploring bilateral negotiations, but I think it shows a couple of things. The Palestinian issue is the one that they can easily reach for. They know that it's sympathetic for their population.
Nice,
they're linking their own history. And it's also a deeply, not so subtle shot at the United States here. It's like, we're not taking orders from you whenever it comes to our relationship here with Israel anymore, which I think is very fascinating to watch this.
I think that's highly significant.
So
There's two
notice
things.
how that Taiwan and Ukraine are like super pro-Israel, right? But South Korea is taking a different perspective. And the Japanese government, led by a far-right leader, very pro-Israel. How about that?
Here. Number one, I mean, it's worth noting that, of course, at the height of the Israeli
genocide. How is Taiwan feeling about this? Taiwan is like, yes, Daddy, America, we'll give all of our weapons to Israel. We don't need any weapons. Oh, Daddy, oh, America, we love Israel more than you. That's Taiwan's position.
In Gaza, they had nothing to say.
Here's an example. Taiwan supports U.S. and Israel's stance on Iran. Taiwan has expressed support for the United States and Israel in ongoing conflict with Iran while calling for greater freedom and democracy for the Iranian people. The island's foreign ministry said it backs international efforts to help Iranians pursue democratic rights, positioning Taiwan alongside what it described as the global democratic community. Officials also condemned Iran's recent missile and drone attacks targeting countries in the Gulf, describing them as indiscriminate. Taiwan's leadership has increasingly framed international conflicts through the lens of democracy, drawing parallels between Israel's security challenges and its own situation. Senior officials in Taipei have described both countries as key partners, with one minister stating U.S. and Israeli actions are aimed at countering terrorism. Taiwan has not had any diplomatic relations with Iran since 1971, when Tehran recognized the People's Republic of China. Meanwhile, the KMT met with Xi. Okay, what did this guy say? What the fuck is this video? Guys, you got to give me more context.
But obviously, the entire population of the world effectively has turned against Israel because of what they have seen and the horror that was perpetrated there. So now that Israel has been directly involved in the Iran war, which is plunging the entire world into economic chaos, which is directly damaging dramatically the South Korean economy, now they can use the moral issue of the way you treat Palestinians to also, push back against Israel at a time when South Koreans are obviously suffering. So there's that. And then the other piece is the U.S. piece. The U.S. has been shown to be relatively weak, weaker than expected. We were humiliated in a lot of ways. And so the threats from Trump and the fear of how he'll respond and that he'll have Israel's back and you can't, break from them because they're our ally and you need to be on board with them no matter what they do.
Without 0% starvation on the planet for humans, these issues aren't really that consequential. Without 0% starvation, we are the same as the birds and the bugs. Who do you think is causing starvation? What institutions do you think are causing starvation in the world? South Korea is occupied territory by the United States. Same thing as Japan. Japan and South Korea do not have independent politics. They have a politics that is largely dictated from DC. The CIA has killed political leaders in Japan and South Korea. Like, they're not independent countries. KMT leadership statement after meeting with Xi. Good point. True. Very true. Chang Li-woon, leader of the KMT in the opposition to Taiwan, after meeting today with Chinese President Xi Jinping, we cannot allow Taiwan and the Taiwan Strait to become a battlefield. We are the vanguard. The path to reunification has already begun? I don't know about the reunification. You can't add that with brackets. You can't add that with brackets. I sincerely hope that all political parties in China's Taipei region, in the context of cross-strait relations, abandon their internal differences and work together for peace. General Secretary Xi Jinping has shown a significant gesture of goodwill. Such exchanges will go... That was very fast. Such exchanges will definitely go beyond the scope of exchanges between the Communist Party of China and the KMT. Such a broad and open-minded approach is something the Chinese Kuomintang Party is very pleased to see. We're not here today for the sake of any single party's interests. We are here today because we have historical responsibilities. We're here today because we cannot allow Taiwan to become a battlefield. So we take the first step and begin to walk. I think from now on, the path will only get smoother and wider. Okay. So the KMT is like, the KMT is very interesting because in history, they were a right-wing fascist party. And then they became more like, they got moderated by the, democratization of Taiwan in the late 80s. But they maintained Chinese nationalism. So like, they still believe they are Chinese. Whereas the DPP is like the evolution of the strategy against China, which is accepting the status quo that China is ruled by the Communist Party and Taiwan is not going to be, displacing that. It's not the government of China. So they're now focusing on like separationism and building the Taiwanese identity, whereas the KMT is still a continuation of Chinese identity. So as China becomes more and more powerful, people that have Chinese identity are identifying more with China. And so you have this like very weird, like cross ideological push toward unification. Relevant explainer? Someone made an explainer on this? Oh my God, 36 fucking minutes. Okay, that's way too long. I ain't doing that shit.
Those threats are not as potent, especially again at a time when you have a genuine
maybe
national crisis in South Korea because of the energy crunch. So it's both a sign of just how furious they are with Israel and also a sign of comparative weakness from the U.S.
There's a couple of other elements to this too. So the Gulf countries, remember South Korea, because they've been under threat here from the North Koreans, they have a very robust and actually very good defense industry. So a lot of their arms and munitions have been backfilling a lot of the gaps of the U.S. So what's happened is that a lot of these Gulf countries, just reading this yesterday, has been going out and buying a bunch of South Korean weapons, missile interceptors. They have a pretty robust, their own system, which, as I understand it, they're quite sophisticated and they're much cheaper, actually, than many even U.S. systems. So Israel, though, maybe they were looking in the future to buy some South Korean weapons. I don't know if that's going to happen now. And you also see South Korea with a little bit of its own leverage. They're like, oh, you Gulf countries, you guys want our weapons? Well, maybe we're going to have to cut some deals here on the side. All of this is...
The KMT is a center-right party that's more socially conservative, and the DDP is socially liberal party that's super pro-separation due to U.S. influence. Yes, I know. That's what I was saying.
Just displacement of U.S. supremacy role in the region. This country, so I was just reading here, South Korea and Israel, they signed a free trade agreement like 6 years ago, right? So these are not nations with any real enmity. They have tech cooperation, COVID. You know, I was looking for Gaza. They urged a ceasefire and humanitarianism, but they were very balanced. Like they didn't, outward condemnation. This is by far, one of the bigger incidents. Another thing, when we keep our eye on Asia, I spotted this. Nationwide protests in Japan just a couple days ago. This was on Wednesday, that were over 100 locations, over 50,000 people actually took to the streets. It wasn't just about the Iran war, but some of it was. Let's take a listen.
Protest just outside Japan's parliament, and there are thousands of people here. It's really rare to see a protest of this size in Tokyo.
イランの人たちには連帯を伝えたいなというふうに思っています。一人じゃないんだよというか、日本にも反対している人がいるんだよということを伝えたいなと思っています。
Protests were held across Japan in over 100 locations. They were planned before Iran and the U.S. agreed to a 2-week ceasefire. Many showed up anyway, though, fearing it won't last and that fighting could restart.
The protesters here are also criticizing the Japanese Prime Minister, Sanai Takaichi, and calling on her to step down.
I mean, look, I think it's interesting. Like she said, it's pretty rare. This was not just about Iran. It was also about their own constitution. So, look, every nation has domestic politics. I'm not trying to say that it's all about this. But there are signs of interesting things. And the Japanese prime minister, she's in a tough spot. Their government also, I mean, they had all these budget problems. I've been reading a little bit about the first budget that they had to, some 11-year, it's very similar to our Congress, but they're having issues with that. But Iran remains a single problem. They had a call this morning, I was looking, where, they're urging diplomacy and reopening of the Straits of Hormuz. Remember, 70, almost 80% of their oil, and South Korea, very similarly, they also rely heavily on natural gas, and then they have the same problems whenever it comes to jet fuel. All of this, I think, just demonstrates like the way that this war is breaking apart these alliances in Asia. And then it also opens the question about the naval blockade of the Straits of Hormuz. Are we going to board Chinese vessels? And if you're China, I mean, look, China's singular goal with Japan and South Korea has been to separate it from the United States. South Korea made its gamble during the THAAD situation, where China threatened economic boycott, and South Korea said, we got to sit here and we got to take the pain. We got to keep these THAAD missiles here, or in battery and the radar, because at the end of the day, America's our guarantor of security. So even though we're going to take a ton of pain, we got to sit here and we got to take it because it's good for us in the long run. How have we repaid them? By destroying their economy. Yeah. Same with Japan. I mean, for them, they're like, look, we have this alliance.
Well, yeah, Japan got a super far right landslide to blame immigrants. Can you imagine blaming immigrants in Japan for your problems? Like, look at how hilarious that is. The idea that the problems in Japan are due to immigrants. Like, think about how hilarious that idea is.
And this painful history, but at the end of the day, like, we have a deep consumer relationship. We're very, very
I've made an app to visualize the neoliberal lobbying efforts and connections. Are there any big names or dark groups I'm missing here? Thanks. Yes. Yes. You're missing a lot.
China, their sole goal is to cleave off South Korea and Japan from the U.S. and to actually have them basically have a reverse relationship where they're like, look, we're not going to attack you, but you get access to our consumer market. So it looks like a more appealing pitch than it was in the past. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen overnight, but all these policymakers, they have to consider their own national interest. And right now, we're not in their national interest. We're actively hurting their national interest, and it's showing up in all of these different ways.
Yeah, and Israel is like an incredible world villain, as are we increasingly at this point. And let's put D6 up on the screen. Treat to
increasingly, we are. Like, we've been a villain since 2001, bro. I mean, you could really argue that we were a villain throughout the Cold War as well, but Americans aren't ready to hear that yet. America's not ready to hear that reality yet. But it's okay. It's okay. But we are unabashedly the world's villain. I mean, we cut off funding for the World Food Program. We cut off funding for AIDS medication. Like, think about that. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, VO has heard that I am hangry. I heard you. Theo has heard that I was hangry and has made me a breakfast burrito. W. Nice. Thank you, Theo. I hope you rub her feet as payment. Chatter. Stop being so horny on Maine. Chatter. See what I mean? 0% starvation doesn't matter. Yes, that's capitalism. Capitalism would rather destroy food than give it to people that need it. That's really just old school. If you want to understand our system, grapes of wrath quote about the oranges. This is like the best quote. The works of the roots of the vines, of the trees, must be destroyed to keep up the price. And this is the saddest, bitterest thing of all. Carloads of oranges dumped on the ground. The people came for miles to take the fruit, but this could not be. How would they buy oranges at 20 cents a dozen if they could drive out and pick them up? And men with hoses squirt kerosene on the oranges. And they are angry at the crime, angry at the people who have come to take the fruit. 1 million people hungry, needing the fruit, and kerosene sprayed over the golden mountains. And the smell of rot fills the country. Burn coffee for fuel in the ships. Burn corn to keep warm. It makes a hot fire. Dump potatoes in the rivers and place guards along the banks to keep hungry people from fishing them out. Slaughter the pigs and bury them, and let the putrescence drip down into the earth. There is a crime here that goes beyond denunciation. There is a sorrow here that weeping cannot symbolize. There is a failure here that topples all our success. The fertile earth, the straight tree rows, the sturdy trunks, and the ripe fruit, and children dying of pellagra must die because a profit cannot be taken from an orange. And coroners must fill in the certificate, died of malnutrition, because the food must be forced to rot. The people come with nets to fish for potatoes in the river, and the guards hold them back. They come in rattling cars to get the dumped oranges, but the kerosene is sprayed. And they stand still and watch the potatoes float by, listen to the screaming pigs being killed in a ditch and covered with quicklime. Watch the mountains of oranges slop down into a putrefying ooze. In the eyes of the people, there is a failure. And in the eyes of the hungry, there is a growing wrath. In the souls of the people, the grapes of wrath are filling and growing heavy for the vintage. Wow, an old arrangement of words that mean nothing to, ma'am. I think you may be having a schizoaffective break.
Parsi was talking about from the Israeli perspective, what might happen, or, you know, the way that Trump may approach negotiations moving forward. Netanyahu, we played for you last week, said the war's not over. They still are prepared to go back. They had this apparent coordinated leak to all three of the major Hebrew TV networks saying that they're gearing up for renewed conflict with Iran. And so Trump is going to face, you know, a real question. If he actually wants to end U.S. direct involvement in a hot war with Iran, he's either going to have to constrain Israel, or he's going to have to make it very clear, Israel, you are on your own. And if they're on their own, they're really pretty screwed. I mean, already their interceptor stockpiles are down to double digits. They've been incredibly dependent on the U.S. Navy to protect them as much as they have been protected. And obviously the Iranian ability to penetrate those defenses and do damage inside of Israel has increased the longer that the war has gone on. So on the one hand, Israel looks like it's very strong. You know, they've dominated Gaza. They're dominating the West Bank. They're taking over a part of Lebanon, although the Hezbollah resistance has been stronger than they thought. They finally got the U.S. to do the war in Iran that they have long sought. But at the same time, the only reason, the only goodwill that they have in the world basically is among boomers in the U.S. and the president of the United States. We are the only thing that stands between them and having to actually live within their means and act like a real state, live within their borders, and come to some sort of an agreement with their neighbors, or they won't exist anymore. So it's a very tenuous moment for Israel. There's a New York Times piece this morning that's talking about how Israelis are not feeling like this Iran war has gone very well. They're looking at this, they're like, we've been living in bomb shelters. You know, there's certainly, we don't know exactly how much, there's certainly been significant damage within the country of Israel. And what do we have to show for it? Iran is probably, if anything, more likely to pursue a nuclear weapon. Their missile stockpile remains intact. There's been some damage done to it, but nobody's under any illusion that they won't be able to, build back better, I suppose. And so they're asking themselves, like, what was this all for? Which is why so much of the domestic pressure is going to be on Netanyahu to go back to war, which is something he wants to do, and very likely, to drag us back in as he did before.
I don't think it's out of the question, and it's clear to, I think, for the rest of the world, like this just came across. Let's talk about it a little bit. Prime Minister Netanyahu at a cabinet meeting, he says, I spoke yesterday with Vice President Vance. He called me from his plane. He reported to me in detail, as this administration does every day. So I noted, I go, Netanyahu is openly just being like the vice president of the administration, report to me in detail every day. So you and I, what are we focusing on? To the guy who literally was raised near the city of Philadelphia. He speaks fluent English. I think he knows what report to me in detail every day means. So a bunch of these Zionists, I pointed this out, a bunch of these Zionists are like, you idiot, they're in a war. Of course they talk every day. I'm like, he didn't say talk. He said report to me in detail. What's the impression? He gives this language openly to the world and to Israel to say, I'm the dad. Right. I'm in charge. He knows what he's doing. He didn't misspeak. Look, let's give him credit. Like, I think he chooses his words very carefully. He wants to humiliate the vice president and the United States.
Political actor.
Exactly.
We can give him that.
He knows exactly what he's doing whenever he uses this type of language to say to his domestic audience, I'm still in charge. Oh, and just so you're all aware, his corruption trial miraculously was pushed 2 more months because of security and national concerns. So that means we have 2 months before you has to restart the war. It doesn't mean that it can't come any earlier. But Korea, Japan, Australia, all the UK, France. I mean, it's not just we're doing this about Asia. Just this morning, both the chief powers of NATO, military powers, Germany, France, and the UK are all like, we have nothing to do with this. We want nothing to do with your blockade. This all needs to end right now. We are destroying all of our alliances, and it does appear as if we're doing it on behalf of Israel. They can wake up and they can read too, and they're like, well, this is bizarre. This is weird. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
So we're shredding it, and it's not necessary. All right. I'll take Korea any day of the week.
And let's put D8 up on the screen, because this matters, maybe not in terms of the political leaders, but in terms of global opinion. And as you said, should be about this infant child that was murdered by Israel in Lebanon while she was attending her father's funeral. And so, these are the sorts of horrific, gut-wrenching headlines that continue to come out because of the insanely barbaric actions of Israel. So you are really dependent on these countries perceiving it to be in their national interest to back you, because you've lost the global public. And we're not the only country where there are, people who have really hardened in their opinions against Israel, where the political landscape is really shifting. We're the most important one because of how much support we provide them, and of course as the, global former hegemon. But there are countries around the world where sentiment has hardened against Israel, and we'll continue to see these horrific headlines come out. And so, any political leader, once they perceive it to be in their national interest to break from Israel, as South Korea is, perceiving that to be in their interest right now as they deal with the economic fallout of the Iran war, they're going to do that because the population is already there.
Yep, that's right. All right, let's get to the Swalwell, shall we? Hey, if you like that video.
All I can say is supporting, Israel is basically going for all their biggest dreams. They want to annex the West Bank. They want to annex Lebanon up to the Litani River. They've annexed the Golan Heights. They're basically committing their genocide against the Palestinians to bend the demographic curves down. And that's that. Benjamin Netanyahu is going for all of the long-term right-wing goals in Israel. That's what it is. Not that complicated. And the United States of America is helping him every step of the way. All right, chat, I wanted to show you this because it's fucking funny. The Spanish Prime Minister went to meet Xi.
很高兴啊，同桑尼斯先生再次会面。
Very pleased to meet you, Prime
这是
Minister
你4
Sanchez.
年
This is
内
your
第4次
fourth
访
visit to China in 4 years.
当今世界乱象
Today the world
丛
is
生
in turmoil and
国际
disorder.
秩序礼崩乐坏，如何对待国际法和国际秩序？
How a country approaches international law and the international order.
反映的这是一国的
reflects its worldview, values, and its approach to order and
世
responsibility.
界观、价值观、秩序观、责任观。中国和西班牙都是有原则。
China and Spain are both principled countries that value justice and are willing to stand on the right side of history.
讲道义的国家，不愿意站在历史正确的一边。我们应该加
We
强
should
沟
strengthen
通，
communication,
巩
deepen
固
mutual
互信，
trust, and enhance
紧密合
cooperation.
作，反对世界
We
倒
must
退
oppose the
回
return of the world to the
丛
law of
林
the
法
jungle.
则，共同捍卫真
Uphold
正的
true
多边主义，
multilateralism and
守
safeguard
护
global peace and
全球的
development.
和平与发展。
Presidente, sí, es un
British G, it's a
auténtico
great honor to
placer
meet you
volver
again.
a verle. Que hoy
Today
volvemos
we are
a
willing to
elevar
work with China to
al poner
launch a
en marcha el
strategic
diálogo
dialogue and
estratégico
further upgrade
entre
bilateral
nuestros dos
relations.
países. Somos un pueblo
We Spaniards
amigable
are a
y
friendly and
constructivo,
constructive people with
con
a
una
long
larga
history.
historia, como también tiene
Like
China.
China, we are a
Somos un
stable and
país
predictable
estable,
country.
predecible, y porque sabemos
As we
que
understand, the
solo
only
ese
such a
espíritu
spirit can
nos
bring lasting
conducirá a
prosperity
una
and peace.
prosperidad y a una paz duradera.
Now, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Nobel Prize winning economist Paul Krugman just came out with a piece today declaring that China has won the war in Iran. Chinese electrotech is the big winner in the Iran war. An energy-hungry world is being pushed away by America and into China's arms. He won the Nobel Prize in economics, which is technically a different Nobel Prize, but it is what it is. Okay? Donald Trump wants to stop the renewable energy revolution, but he can't. It will continue to advance around the world because the economics and the science are compelling. Trump can, however, ensure that the revolution passes us by. And the big geopolitical winner from Trump's hostility to the energy revolution will be China, which dominates the production of renewable energy infrastructure. Furthermore, the China-led energy future will arrive ahead of schedule thanks to the debacle in Iran. Soaring oil and gas prices combined with the threat of shortages have driven home the riskiness of relying on fossil fuels. The New York Times had a striking graphic about electricity prices in Europe. Now, if you look at this chat, what do you notice? The cheapest electricity are France, Spain, and Portugal. Now, France, Spain, and Portugal all use renewable energy for their electricity. France, in particular, uses a lot of nuclear as well. Poland, Germany, Italy, they rely on coal and natural gas. They're getting absolutely fucked. France and Spain, which mostly generate electricity from non-fossil fuel sources, including nuclear power in France. Austria relies on natural gas and hydropower. So they're mostly green, but they have a little bit of gas. Trump's decision to counter Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz by blockading the Strait of Hormuz surely adds to the perception that relying on U.S. oil and liquid natural gas, which is what countries will have to do if they don't turn to solar and wind, isn't safe. Who can guarantee that an erratic America won't try to weaponize other countries' dependence on our energy? Great, not just Mike's video tangentially related to this. Ooh, we'll have to check that out. So Trump's adventurism in Iran has sparked a global rush to invest in solar panel, wind power, and the batteries that make renewable energy work 24/7. Iran war is seen as boosting renewable energy investment with focus on security, not climate. And this has always been true. This has always been true. If you have your own solar panels and you have your own batteries, you never have to worry about a power outage again. You have your own micro generation. You're fucking golden. And if energy prices skyrocket, you're fucking immune. So solar made sense, assuming that energy prices were just going to continue to be normal. But if as soon as you throw in one event, one black swan event where energy prices rise faster than inflation, solar panels will pay for themselves in like 2 years. It's unbelievable how more people aren't doing it. So, and where will the world procure most of its renewable energy equipment it seeks? From China. China is the workshop of the world. Its manufacturing sector is larger than those of the US, Japan, Germany, and South Korea combined. Chat, this is a Nobel Prize winning economist, and he's saying China fucking dog walks us. And what are they dog walking us in? The most advanced technologies of the future that make war over energy irrelevant. While China is strong in many industries, it is utterly dominant in electrotech, the cluster of industries, solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, and electric vehicles at the heart of the renewables revolution. He also left out one that's even more important, high-speed rail. China is basically creating a world where you don't need fossil fuels for transportation. They're trying to make a world where you could get transportation from your front door to across the country without ever using any fossil fuels. You walk out your front door, you go to an electrically powered metro station or tram or bus and you go to the high-speed rail. You take a high-speed rail, you get off the high-speed rail, you go back onto a bus or another metro station, and then you are at your destination. You never have to use fossil fuels in any step of the process. And it's fast and convenient. So your standard of living is not going down by using the electrical alternative. In fact, it's probably going up because electrical transportation is quieter. Electrical transportation is cleaner. So not only is it cheaper, not only is it secure, but your air is getting cleaned up. You're not spending time in fucking traffic congestion. So it's faster, it's cheaper, it's cleaner, and it's secure. That is what China invested in over the last 15 years. That's what they've been investing in. What the fuck are we investing in? Bombs? At the heart of the renewable at the heart of the renewables revolution, or as the Wall Street Journal puts it, China's green industrial complex rules. China accounts for more than 80% of the global production in all of these sectors, with the exception of wind turbines. In the wind turbine sector, China's share is only 60% because Europe retains a significant role. Our planet is our planet is begging to give us unlimited free energy that is clean. And America refuses to take it. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. And when you look at, look what we're doing to our planet. Look at what we're doing for oil. This is what we're doing right now for oil. This is what we do for oil right now. This is Canada. Look at the devastation. This is Greenpeace protesters trying to stop the production. Look at the devastation. They've destroyed everything. We do this too. Look at our fucking, look at us.
For much of the 20th century, most coal in West Virginia was mined by men working deep underground. But by the 1970s, a new kind of mining was starting to transform West Virginia on a scale that can still be hard to comprehend unless you see it from the air. At first, coal-rich Mingo County looks like many other forested areas of the Appalachians. But when the fog clears, you'll soon discover that many of the mountains themselves are gone. This is the land of mountaintop removal, a mining technique so powerful and efficient that companies can simply carve off the tops of entire mountains to get to the coal buried below. This mine is one of the biggest mountaintop mines in the state. It's called Hobet 21. Not long ago, this area was blanketed with trees and hills. Now, it's a 12,000-acre dig site. It can take just a few men and a few monster machines to destroy an entire Appalachian mountain. Once the trees are clear-cut, geologists locate the seams of coal below. Then, the company drills holes, stuffs them with powerful explosive, and blows them up to loosen earth and rock. Next, excavators move in to rip the mountain apart, scoop by scoop. For every ton of coal produced in a mine like this one, the company has to remove 16 tons of earth. The best way to grasp the scale of this operation is to watch it from the air. It looks like a giant sandbox with enormous motorized toys. All this activity has one singular purpose: to uncover valuable seams of coal like this one, and then dig it out and ship it to market. Surface mining is much safer for West Virginia's miners, since they don't have to work underground in potentially dangerous tunnels. But it comes with a huge environmental cost. 500 mountains have already disappeared, along with the habitats for hundreds of species. And lives are impacted too. When a mining company carves off a mountaintop, it has to put that earth somewhere. And so, it dumps it into nearby valleys. 3,200 local streams have been destroyed. And entire communities have been forced to relocate when the mining companies buy up the land.
I'm sorry, Chad. I got emotional there for a second. It's very frustrating, man. Because I've been fighting this shit for 20 fucking years, man, and it makes no sense. And people are just like, eh. And you're like, bro, it's cheaper to build solar panels. And like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then it pollutes the air, and then you get fucking cancer and you die. That's the thing. They destroy the environment, and then it gets burned. And then it goes away, and you destroyed the climate, you destroyed the environment that puts massive pollution into the air, which gives you cancer and asthma, and you fucking die. And it's not even cheaper. It's not even cheaper. What are we doing? Why does China dominate electrotech? Industrial policy, deliberate government promotion of these industries is part of the answer. But a key driver of China's success has been the speed with which Chinese themselves have been adopting renewable energy, creating a huge domestic market that provides their electrotech industries with big advantages, even in foreign markets. There's a widespread, completely erroneous belief among opponents of renewable energy that China produces electrotech equipment, but doesn't use this stuff itself. Speaking at the World Economic Forum 3 months ago, Trump declared that China makes almost all the windmills, and yet I haven't been able to find any wind farms in China. I try really hard not to use the R slur. I try really hard not to use it because I don't like living in a space where people are like using the R slur and insulting, you know, people that have developmental or mental disabilities. And I don't like that kind of culture. But I'm sorry. I am 41 years old and I can't help but think it. When I was growing up, we used to say it all the time. I can't help but think it. When I read Donald Trump, I can't help but think it. And I work overtime to try to interrogate that part of myself. But I'm sorry, guys. He's fucking stupid. And he's not just stupid. His fans are stupid. They don't deserve our respect. They don't deserve our understanding because they're stupid assholes. They just need to be overcome. I'm sorry, guys. Like, they have to be beaten. There's nothing that you could say about this anymore. At a certain point, this level of stupidity becomes evil. Did you ever think of that? That's a good way of looking at it. They're smart. China's very smart. They make them, they sell them for a fortune. They sell them to stupid people that buy them, but they don't use them themselves. They put up a couple big wind farms, but they don't use them. They just put them up to show people what they could look like. They don't spin. They don't do anything. They use a thing called coal mostly. China does, in fact, still burn a lot of coal. Why does China burn a lot of coal? Because of the Strait of Hormuz. China uses coal, and they're trying to stop using coal. But they still use coal because they don't want to rely on fossil fuels, because they're a country that developed its industry at a period where we all relied on fossil fuels. So they still use coal because they have coal. And that's the way to protect themselves from the Strait of Hormuz, the Strait of Malacca, from being cut off by America. That's why they do it. But they're building hundreds of nuclear power plants, hundreds of wind farms, hundreds of solar fields, hundreds of grid solar, high speed. They are building hydroelectric dams and geothermal plants. They are trying to get themselves off of coal. But its use of wind and solar panel is rising rapidly. The demand for solar panels, wind turbines, and batteries depends on the increase in renewable energy generation rather than its level. And China's renewable energy, both wind and solar, has been larger than the rest of the world combined. I'll say that again. The rest of the world combined. They only have 1.4 billion people, but they're using more renewables than the rest of us combined? How's that make sense? China also accounts for 60% of the world's sales of electric cars. And electrotech is exactly the kind of industry in which the large domestic market translates into success at exporting into other markets. I want you guys to understand that the person to blame for the fact that we don't have this in our country has the name Barack Hussein Obama. He won in a landslide. He had 60 senators. He had a vast majority in the House, and they didn't invest. They did small ball, small dick, bipartisan bullshit, missed the opportunity to have a new deal, and now we're dealing with the consequences of that failure. Hopefully, we get to have another wave. Hopefully, AOC is swept into an FDR-style majority, and we can overturn the filibuster, and we can pack the Supreme Court, and we can invest the trillions of dollars it needs. I could see it happening. It's possible. But we need you to stop tolerating people like Mallory McMorrow in Michigan. We need you to stop tolerating people like Alyssa Slotkin. We need you to stop tolerating people like Janet Mills. We need you to actually support the people that are running for office, as flawed as they are, who are actually engaged in bold, transformative thinking. That's our only way. And it's not something, we can't sit back and wait. We don't have the ability to sit back and wait anymore. The planet is going to cook itself to death. I think we need a new constitution. I'm very, 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 you know, it's funny. I consider myself to be a sewer socialist, but I also support the idea of a new constitution, right? I contain multitudes of DSA caucuses. I've got a mug bone. I've got a Reform and Revolution bone. I've got an Emerge bone. I've got a groundwork bone too. I'm not really an SMC guy. I don't like them very much. I try. I don't like them very much. They're too soft on the Democrats. Do you think AOC will turn on turbo mode and get over her self-doubt? I'm working on it. I'm working on it, chat. I'm working on trying to get more influence. Red Star too. I am trying to get more influence with people's thinking. And it is what it is. We'll see how it works. I'm talking to people. I'm doing what I can. My main the main point I would make to AOC is be bold. Don't bother talking to the people to your right in a conciliatory fashion. Just don't even bother, right? Just be bold 100% of the time. Don't whine. Ignore the people that are bad faith. State your position openly and proudly. Bold and unapologetic. Be on the attack. And I think the one problem for AOC right now is she's trying to farm aura. She's trying to farm aura with regular Democrats. And she's worried about going on the offensive too early. And I think that's going to have to change. She can't run a Bernie Sanders, Jeremy Corbyn campaign. She's got to run a Zoran Mamdani campaign, which is a happy warrior, but double underline the warrior part. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is the thing. This is why Zoran Mamdani won, because he had this gear.
Mr. Cuomo, in 2021, 13 different women who worked in your administration credibly accused you of sexual harassment. Since then, you have spent more than $20 million in taxpayer funds to defend yourself, all while describing these allegations as entirely political. You have even gone so far as to legally go after these women. One of those women, Charlotte Bennett, is here in the audience this evening. You sought to access her private gynecological records. She cannot speak up for herself because you lodged a defamation case against her. I, however, can speak. What do you say to the 13 women that you sexually harassed?
If you want to be in government, then you have to be serious and mature. There were allegations of sexual harassment. They went to 5 district attorneys, fully litigated for 4 years. The cases were dropped, right? You know that as a fact. So everything you just stated, you just said was a misstatement, which we're accustomed to.
Stated was a misstatement?
Yes, because the cases were dropped.
We need AOC to have that energy. Okay, we need to have that energy. Here's an example when I talk about chat. I had Oliver Larkin over to my, to a one-on-one with me. I had him a one-on-one. He's tall, unfortunately. So I'm doing what I can, chat, to create the exact. I'm not just saying this shit into the ether. I am talking to people, and if we can get Oliver Larkin across the finish line, we will have a Mike from PA head in Congress. We've had enough Hasanabi heads. We need a Mike from PA head. For all the component industries of electrotech that are marked by steep learning curves, the more a country produces, the better it gets at producing. By dominating electrotech now, China is gaining experience and know-how that no other country can match. It is also creating an industrial ecosystem of specialized suppliers that, again, no other nation will be able to rival. And the low cost generation by this industrial ecosystem gives China a huge advantage in global markets. Basically, what you guys need to understand is that Dr. Paul Krugman, Nobel Prize winner, is saying that China's position is superior economically to the United States in a fundamental way. And Paul Krugman is not some sort of soft-headed socialist. He is a mainstream saltwater economist. I'd say that he's more of a post-Keynesian than a lib. I don't think it's fair to completely call him a lib. I'd say he's more of a post-Keynesian, which is a left-leaning, actual left-leaning position. But not, you know, as much as I'm not a huge Paul Krugman fan, I think it's fair to say that he's a post-Keynesian, which is a form of liberalism, I guess. But he's to the left of most of the Democratic Party on economics. Under President Biden, the United States took much needed steps toward developing its own electrotech sectors, notably batteries and electric vehicles, and also sought to accelerate the growth of renewable energy in general. But not only has the Trump administration canceled all of Biden's renewable energy programs, it has actively tried to block private commercial investments in renewable energy. Guys, this is fucking insane. This is a fucking insane position. I'm going to block investment in renewable energy? Krugman is mildly opposing the Chicago boys. Not to get into this conversation too far, but in American economic thought, there was two main camps. They were called the saltwater school and the freshwater school. Okay? American politics has been dominated by the freshwater school for 50 years. All right? And so that's neoliberalism. Okay? Whereas the saltwater school is more like post-Keynesianism, or like trying to return back to rejuvenating like a Keynesian center-left trade unionist mentality. So I'm thinking of people like Paul Krugman. I'm thinking of people like Joseph Stiglitz. I'm thinking of people like that. Paul Krugman is a new Keynesian. I mean, it's really the same shit. It's all in the same category. Could you and Hasan do a collab stream where you guys have a convo about environmentalism? I'm doing my best, my friend. Didn't know about the fresh and saltwater schools? Yeah. It's like freshwater versus saltwater economics. I just typoed. There you go. It's in Wikipedia. In economics, the freshwater school, sometimes called Sweetwater School, comprises U.S.-based macroeconomists, I can pronounce that word, in the early 1970s challenged the prevailing consensus in macroeconomics research. And then you have the new Keynesian or post-Keynesian economics. These are the saltwater people. Anyway, let's keep going. Why aren't we talking about collapse here? How black-pilled are you? I am not a black. I think black-pilling is liberalism. I would never take a black pill. If I felt black pill, I'd be Reverend Toller, not black pill. Anyway, let's keep going. By the time America frees itself from Trump's fossil fuel obsession, if it ever does, China's lead in the manufacture of renewables will probably be insurmountable. Now, a world that relies on China for solar panels and batteries isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's certainly less risky for most nations, politically and economically, than relying on liquid natural gas imports from Qatar or the United States. Furthermore, although the Trump administration is full of climate denialists, climate change is continuing. March was a record warm month in the United States. Jesus Christ. Given the rate at which the planet is warming, a shift away from fossil fuels can't come fast enough. Where the equipment needed to make that shift happen was manufactured is a secondary issue. Yet it is sad to watch this country sabotage itself and cede the most important industry of the future to China. In doing so, we make ourselves poorer, technologically backward, and less influential in a world that is speeding towards the energy revolution. In the end, we aren't just burning fossil fuels, we're burning our future. And there you have it, chat. There you have it. And I just want to say, you know, I'll say it because Paul Krugman didn't say it. So not only is China winning geopolitically with their non-interventionist, peaceful coexistence, mutual cooperation approach to the world. That's what China's approach to the world is. We want to engage with you peacefully and constructively. China removed all tariffs from African nations for their imports into China. Not only are they doing that, they are actually making the investments that they need in order to harden themselves from the future of climate change. And that is just unfortunate. And I have to say it, I'll say it because Paul Krugman didn't. Biden slaps high tariffs on Chinese solar. You cannot afford to buy solar panels in America because Joe Biden did this, not Donald Trump. Joe Biden is the person who said no thank you to solar panels, no thank you to high quality EVs from China, no thank you for competition. U.S. President Joe Biden is ramping up tariffs on Chinese-made electric cars, solar panels, steel, and other goods. The White House said the measures, which include a 100% border tax on electric cars from China, was a response to unfair policies and intended to protect U.S. jobs. Unfair policy. As well as a rise from 25% to 100% on electric vehicle tariffs, levies on solar cells will increase from 25% to 50%. So if you buy a solar panel in the United States, you're paying over 50% of it in taxes. During the Biden administration's review of the measures, the government received 1,500 comments. The vast majority of them from business owners arguing that they were driving up prices for everyday Americans and asking for them to be removed. Mr. Biden's decision to leave the tariffs in place and expand them into new areas, even as persistent U.S. inflation has weighed on his approval ratings, is a testament to the dramatic shift in trade views for both political parties in the U.S., which had long championed the benefits of global commerce. And there you have it. The United States of America is bipartisanly fucked. Can I just say something about solar panels that needs to be said? When I buy a solar panel, you are giving me energy generation for 30 years. You're giving me energy freedom for 30 fucking years. When you sell me a barrel of oil, I need to get a barrel of oil the next fucking day. I'm dependent upon you. I build all this infrastructure to burn oil. I'm dependent on you the next day. There's no way for China to hold their solar fucking production over our heads. They're giving us freedom from coercion. It's absolutely insane. I work in the solar industry, and it's not just the panels that are taxed, it's other parts of the system. It's fucking disgusting. In Alberta, they enacted a moratorium on green energy to save the environment. Alberta's new renewable energy rules could ban projects from large swathes of land. This is some of the ugliest land in the entire world. No offense, Albertans. But Alberta may be one of the ugliest places in the entire planet. If you're going to put things anywhere, you would put them in Alberta. Not only is it ugly, they have mosquitoes the size of hummingbirds. This is not an exaggeration. Alberta is not ugly. It has wonderful mountain ranges. That's true. It does have some mountains. You are right about that. You are right about that. It's not as completely terrible as some of the other Canadian provinces. But give me a fucking break. And the reason why I say that is I just showed you guys a video. I just showed you guys a video of Alberta. I just did. Did I close it? I just showed you a video of the tar sands. Okay, I can't find it. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Channel tech. By the way, you could put stuff under solar panels. They're not concrete pads. Solar panels can be used for shade, and then you can put things that, you can farm underneath solar panels. It's not like solar panels absorb, like they're not a disgusting plastic tarp or something. They don't destroy anything.
60 Minutes sent Leslie Stahl to film a ghost city in China. There was just one problem. She described desolate condos uninhabited for miles and miles. Zhengdong became the poster child for China's supposed collapse. Then, Wade Shepard, an American journalist who spent 2.5 years researching China's new urban districts, showed up. He found the 60 Minutes crew had filmed inside occupied buildings and called them abandoned. His conclusion, 60 Minutes did not find a ghost city. They created one. Here's what happened. Zhengdong's architects had laid out a 20-year vision. The coverage evaluated it at year 3 and called the game. A project built ahead of demand looks identical to a project built without demand at the 3-year mark. The only way to tell the difference is to understand the planning logic and the timeline. Today, Zhengdong has crossed 1.3 million residents. The frame encoded something larger, a Western judgment about the illegitimacy of state-directed development itself. Whether that judgment is right or wrong, it was baked into the coverage before the data could come in. And the corrections never traveled as far as the original claims. Most people still think Zhengdong is empty. It has 1.3 million people living there. In 2013,
I mean, yes, like Americans are not used to somebody building ahead of demand. China has built 500 cities since the Communist Party came into power. And their urbanization rate is still lower than us. And they're building more. And they're building faster. And they're building things designed around public transit, designed around walkable communities. I want to show you something else that I saw the other day from someone who lives in China. Because I think Westerners need to see more of it. Where is it? Where is it? I retweeted that last one. I had another one. Maybe I liked it. Son of a bitch. Maybe I didn't. Oh, I can't find shit today. I always thought Florida was really fucked up by ignoring solar panels. Yes, of course they did. Solar panels are also hardened against something like a hurricane. Hurricane comes in. If you have micro generation and backup batteries, if the grid gets damaged from the hurricane, you still can maintain your electrical generation, your HVAC systems, your sump pumps. And, you know, again, the Floridians have made themselves more fragile. Your freezer, of course, your oxygen generation equipment. All right, chat, where were we? Oh, God, I wanted to talk about this as well. The United States is implementing an automatic draft.
Now, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. The federal government's preparing to begin automatically registering eligible U.S. men ages 18 to 26 for the military draft pool. The U.S. hasn't had a draft since 1973, but it still maintains a registry of eligible men in case the draft is restored. The new rules around automatic military draft registration were tucked into the 2026 National Defense Authorization Act. In early March, White House...
By the way, Republicans oppose automatic voter registration, but they will have automatic draft registration, not automatic voter registration, but yes to automatic draft registration. So they won't give you an automatic voice in the war, but they will give you an automatic seat on the fucking landing craft.
Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt did not rule out President Trump reinstating the draft itself. She was questioned by Fox News host.
Did I shill? No, I didn't. Fuck, I forgot to shill today. We had a really big stream yesterday, so if you want to support the stream, that would be an amazing time. Sorry for, you know, chat. I was boiling hot and hungry. And now I feel a lot better. So thank you for tolerating me today. I was kind of whiny and bitchy today. Sorry about that. I could not find that 100-view video from Third Way. But it was an important point. It wasn't even that important of a point. I was like, I know this exists. I know this fucking exists. Why can I find this video? And I was having a freak out. Is this a sign that a draft is coming? Well, this is certainly what would happen before a draft. Defect to Iran if you survive the landing. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of The Last of Us because I think the creator, but there is a scene. I think the creator is a Zionist, but there is a scene in it that I think you all should learn from.
Maria Bartiromo.
Mothers out there are worried that we're going to have a draft, that they're going to see their sons get in and daughters get involved in this. What do you want to say about the president's plans for troops on the ground? As we know, it's been largely an air campaign up until now.
It has been, and it will continue to be, and President Trump wisely does not remove options off of the table.
We're joined now by Edward Hasbrook, organizer with the Anti-Draft Coalition, which opposes the plan for automatic registrations, calling for repeal of the Military Selective Service Act. Editor and publisher of Resistors.info. He is a member of the War Resisters League and the Military Law Task Force of the National Lawyers Guild. His recent piece for Responsible Statecraft is headlined, "Even if Team Trump wanted a military draft would be a fiasco," unquote. In the 1980s, Hasbrook publicly refused to register for the draft and spent 6 months in prison. Can you talk, Edward, about what has changed? What is this draft registry that the Trump administration is bringing back?
Well, since 1980, men have been supposed to register with the Selective Service System within 30 days of their 18th birthday, and tell Selective Service within 10 days every time they move until they reach age 26. Very few people do. The efforts to enforce that against a handful of public non-registrants whose public statements could be used to convict us collapsed in the early 1980s. Nobody has been prosecuted in decades. But in the face of growing pressure to recognize the failure of Selective Service and the unavailability of a draft, instead, to save their jobs, the Selective Service System came up with a plan, which they managed to sneak through Congress last year, to give Selective Service a second chance to try to register potential draftees automatically. Now, that won't work because the federal government doesn't have the data they need, but it will produce a database that's highly vulnerable to misuse and weaponization, and even more importantly, it will continue to prop up the myth that the draft is available as a fallback, which in turn enables continued planning for larger, longer wars without war planners having to think about whether enough people would be willing to fight them.
Why do you write that to activate the draft would be a fiasco?
I mean, I honest to God, I think that right now in America, the social contract has been broken. And I don't feel like the average person feels like their country has any stake in their success. So why would people have a stake in risking their life for America? That is the crisis. Also, chat, we're dangerously close to a hype train. Wow. The top sub-gifter and the top bit donor get the hype train conductor badge, which is a golden locomotive next to their name. Wow. Sub, resub, prime sub, 200 bits. You'll start the hype train. What the fuck? What's this? Israel's ambassador to the U.S. says the Lebanese government made it clear that the Israel's ambassador to the U.S. says the Lebanese government has made it clear they will no longer be occupied by Hezbollah, Reuters reports. By the way, Hillary Clinton has been advocating for this behind the scenes. Remember the JFK quote about ask not what your country could do for you, but what you could do for your country? That shit's long been out of the window. In order for you to develop a society where freedom, justice are part of the civic culture, you have to have a reciprocal relationship where those that are vulnerable or struggling or growing are developed to their fullest potentials. That doesn't happen in America. So if there's no buy-in in you, why would you buy in for America? Doesn't make any sense.
Well, in order to figure out who's supposed to register, the government would need to know current addresses, which they don't have. You don't have to report to the government when you move. They would have to figure out sex as assigned at birth, which is the criteria for eligibility for the draft, which isn't reflected in current records in many cases that show current gender. They'd need to know the names and mailing addresses of every immigrant, including undocumented immigrants who clearly aren't included in current federal databases. So they wouldn't have a database that's either accurate or complete. And in addition, they would have the same problems enforcing an actual draft that they had when they tried to enforce registration back in the 1980s, which are that they could only prosecute people if they could prove that their refusal was knowing and willful, which meant they first had to track them down and provably notify them, which they could do in a handful of cases for show trials, but it didn't really scale. And the reason they abandoned the enforcement of draft registration back in the 1980s was that the prosecutions backfired, and young people got the message that there was safety in silence and safety in numbers. And it's that continued, quiet but persistent, nonviolent, non-cooperation by young people that has been one of the greatest successes of the peace movement and of nonviolent direct action in past decades that has prevented a draft. We should thank young people for their service in reining in military expansionism.
Shortly after Trump's inauguration, DOGE was sent in and given access to the current Selective Service registration database. What's the relationship between the Selective Service system and immigration enforcement?
Well, even before putting in place this plan for automatic draft,
you have to register for the Selective Service in the United States if you want to get student loans as a male.
Registration, which will take effect in December, unless in the meantime, in this crucial year, we can get the Selective Service Repeal Act, which will be reintroduced probably quite shortly in Congress. If we can't get that enacted, the change will take effect in December. But what that will do is
it will change the law. Oh, they changed it. Or did they not change it? That used to be true. Before 2021, it was true, but now it's not. Oh, okay, interesting. I didn't know that.
Selective Service unprecedented power to obtain from any other federal agency any information they think might help them identify or locate potential draftees. Now, even before that took effect, at the end of last year, the Selective Service did give notice that they will be turning over their existing registration list for immigration enforcement and other purposes. And once it goes to DOJ, we don't know what those other purposes are, but given the information in the database, it's particularly likely to be weaponized for other purposes against vulnerable trans and immigrant youth.
And finally, if you don't have a draft, how does it end up? It's poor people who go into the military because they need the financial support, and that's who ends up fighting U.S. wars. We have 30 seconds.
I think the important thing is to take the draft off the table, remove it from the arsenal of war planning, which, by forcing the government to confront the question before they make wars of whether enough people will fight them, actually constrains wars before they happen, as opposed to fighting an anti-war movement after they're on.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.
Well, thank you guys, gals, non-binary pals, for all that support. Appreciate you for supporting the stream. That reminds me, chat, we have the funniest and most irrelevant Destiny Orbiter. One of the things about ContraPoints that people don't know is that ContraPoints is a Destiny Orbiter. ContraPoints got their start on YouTube as a Destiny Orbiter and a Destiny friend. And a lot of people kind of like let that go down the memory hole because ContraPoints also was extremely Islamophobic, edgy atheist, YouTube atheist at the beginning. And so people let that part of their past die, you know, as they transition to the Contra, the Natalie that we know. We don't want to dig up the old past. But the reality is that the reason why ContraPoints is so fixated on Hasan is she was a Destiny Orbiter. And it's very funny. And I don't think a lot of people know that. ContraPoints, here, hold on. ContraPoints Destiny. Chatting with YouTuber ContraPoints. Top result.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Hello, how's it going?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Thanks, good.
So, how's life?
Life, it's all right, you know.
Damn, you sound really stressed out. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've been gotten pretty deep into the YouTube hole.
Oh shit! Somebody in my chat said that you decided to try to go full time with it to make a living or whatever.
Yeah, I'm doing that now. That's my job.
Wow, nice.
Doing a conversation with Destiny while he plays League. When Destiny debated with me, chat, you know what he did? Lock the fuck in and beg for help. He was not playing any video games. He had to quit out of all of his video games for the Mike from PA debates. Being a Destiny Orbiter is so fucking funny because once I know somebody was a Destiny Orbiter at any time in their life, I gotta be honest with you, I permanently judge them. I permanently judge them because it's like, bruh. Now, it doesn't mean I hate them forever, but I do kind of laugh at them a bit. You know, I have plenty of my friends that were like friendly with Destiny for a period of time. Usually not that long, because if you're normal, you can't be friends with them for long. But I still do find it very funny because I was never friends with him. I met him and I started making fun of him immediately. Immediately. Within like an hour of meeting him, I was like, "That's a fucking idiot." Anyway, all right. ContraPoints. If it's Israel versus Hamas, I'm voting for Jill Stein. Now, chat, we've said this before and we'll say it again. When an entire nation is being assaulted, an entire nation is being targeted for annihilation, there are going to be formations of resistance that pop up surrounding all sorts of different political philosophies, many of which I disagree with. But when you're looking at the question between genocider and genocided, even if I don't agree with you on your political takes, if you're resisting a genocide, I'm going to take your side and say that you're better than the genocider. And the only exception of that would be is if you are also genociding, which Hamas is not doing. In fact, Hamas came out with being pro two-state solution like over a decade ago at this point. So what are we even talking about here? There is this idea of Hamas that people like Natalie try to create in your mind, and that is that they're similar to ISIS. ISIS is an American ally, okay? Hamas is nothing like ISIS. ISIS is an American ally. ISIS fought Iran. ISIS fought Syria, okay? ISIS got help from Israel. ISIS got help from Saudi Arabia. ISIS got help from the Gulf states. ISIS is an American cutout. It's something that we're too embarrassed to like directly fund, but that we supported through secondary channels. That's where our puppets come in. We're too embarrassed to support ISIS, right? But a lot of fascists and Islamophobes like Natalie, they used ISIS as a way of smearing the entire Middle East. But ironically, ISIS was allied with the U.S. U.S. weapons end up in ISIS hands. Wow, I can't believe this. Study shows weapon given to Syrian rebels ended up in ISIS hands. Wait a minute. You don't say. What states supported ISIS? Turkey, American ally. Kuwait, American ally. Saudi Arabia, American ally. Rand Paul, a junior U.S. senator from Kentucky, accused the U.S. government of indirectly supporting ISIS in the Syrian civil war by arming their allies and fighting their enemies in that country. After the September 2016 Deir ez-Zor air raid, in which U.S.-led coalition airstrikes reportedly killed at least 62 Syrian Arab army soldiers fighting against ISIS, Russia and Syria accused the U.S. government of intentionally providing ISIS with air support. Former president of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, also claimed ISIS is a tool of the United States. In June 2014, former Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki accused the government of Saudi Arabia of funding ISIL. The Saudi Arabian government rejected the claims. Media outlets such as the NBC, BBC, New York Times, US-based think tank Washington Institute for Near East Policy have written about individual Saudi donations to the group and the Saudi state's decade-long sponsorship of Salafism and Wahhabism around the world. In an August 2014 email leaked in the Podesta emails, apparently from former U.S. Secretary of the United States Hillary Clinton, then Counselor John Podesta, memo states that the governments of both Saudi Arabia and Qatar are providing clandestine financial and logistic support to ISIL and other radical Sunni groups in the region. Qatar, Israel. Wow, weird. The reason why I'm bringing this up is you have people like Natalie that use ISIS. They try to create this idea of Hamas as ISIS, when in reality, Iran fought ISIS. But Natalie likes to have that confusion.
It's an Ethan Klein thing where it's like, oh, it can't be my own statements being reflected on by my own community that I've cultivated. It must be some outsider that's pushing them to criticize me. I obviously also have the Pod Johns combo
about, like, who you
that
are,
I had, where I basically, for like, I would say the bulk of our conversation.
Chat, it was me. It was me. I was the person who made ContraPoint's community hater. That was me.
Explain my position on Israel versus Hamas. I think it's a very.
You know what's so funny, chat? I had this exact shirt. I have this exact same shirt, and Vio hated this shirt so much I got rid of it. I had this exact same shirt.
Good conversation that took place with the Pod Johns as well. I think you guys will appreciate it, especially considering that a lot of the liberals that watch Pod Save America, once again, have reacted in the exact.
It's still in your closet, doofus? It's not. No, it's not. Go find it. You lied.
Same way that they reacted every single time I've been on the Pod Johns, which is excitement. They reacted with excitement, frustration for the way that Democrats speak right now on issues, right? I don't know what CNN is talking about. This guy seems pretty all right. We do need people to be more aware of who he actually is, trying to take what little we actually have away. It's not the LGBT or Latinos or black people or Muslims, it's the rich. Significant improvement over Cory Booker, exactly the kind of conversation we need. Honestly, this was a very good interview, much better and much more coherent than I expected, given the way some media is talking about Hasan. Appreciate the substantive focus on the issues instead just the controversy. After listening to Hasan for an hour speak clear and concise reasoning, now I understand why the AIPAC wing of the Democratic Party, which is say 99% of the party, fear and attack him. Logic and reason are not on the side of the Zionists. I've been casually aware of Hasan Piker and heard about some of his controversial comments. This is the first time I've listened to a more in-depth interview with him and entered it with an open mind. The perspectives Hasan offered helped me to expand my understanding of the issues between Israel and Palestine. It's true, people are finally doing their homework. I learned about Hasan from Sarah Longwell at The Bulwark, and within 1 hour after listening to her rant about him, I became a Piker enthusiast. Thanks, Sarah. Hasan is spot on regarding corporate greed. I wasn't sure who Hasan Piker was until Dems started attacking him. After I listened to Kyle Kalinske talk about him, I checked him out and I found that I agree with almost everything he says. Thanks, Dems, for putting him on my radar. John was exactly the right person for this interview with Hasan. Good push, but also civil conversation and letting him explain while still calling out dumb things. This is what democratic politics should look like. Hasan's conviction is so compelling. He's so good whenever he's allowed to expand on his opinions. I love how he stands by his words and doesn't back down. I'm a 64-year-old Democratic woman. I listen to Hasan. I'm so fed up with my own party. If they want to get rid of him, they want to get rid of more of us than they can imagine. I'm 70-year-old moderate Democrat. I found Hasan about a year ago. Do I agree with everything he says or the way he says it? No, I don't. He said things that make me angry. So has every Dem commentator or left-leaning politician I've ever supported. All of them. But the man is out there fighting for what he thinks is right. He's honest about what he feels and experiences. He puts himself out there. He goes and talks to everyone. He's not our enemy. He is our ally.
Lily
This
Joe.
is, as Hasan Productions says, is why they're desperate to try and cancel me. When regular people watch him outside of 20-second clips, this is what happens. Always. Okay? Always. And of course, on the orbit, people who actually watch the interview go, wow, this is awesome. I had no idea what this guy was about. And now that I've actually listened to him without this ridiculous filter, even in a somewhat contentious environment where, you know, my statements are being called in to account, right? There is a little bit of accountability there. It's not like John Favreau is just like letting me run away with whatever I'm saying and doing. All of a sudden, it's a lot more reasonable, okay? These guys are not equipped to deal with subversive mask-on radicals and have done more to sane-wash this lunatic views than probably any other alternative media platform. Ezra Klein argues that we don't have to limit discourse to people we deem acceptable, then does somersaults trying to make Hasan Piker seem more acceptable. As much as he's a never Trumper, he's also a never Democrat too. Piker's a loser. His ideas are losers. So is his politics. Notice how the people that refuse to engage me and the ideals that I represent and fight for are the ones who are the most active in disparaging what this movement is, what this movement represents. Many of them can also be identified with Israel first politics as well. Interesting. Or in this sex pest case, obviously a personal vendetta that he's carried for almost a decade. I promise you, Pod Save America, we do not need to hear from this R word. I think we should all just pay less attention to him. Not the president, the other one. Maybe we lived out a little too hard. Let's go back to talking about getting Liz Cheney for a round 2 on the campaign trail. What is this? Your wiki is currently getting more views than Rogan's. Since March 24th, Hasan the Hun's Wikipedia page has seen more daily traffic than Joe Rogan's every single day. Oh, nice. Oh, hell yeah. Zion is acting like it's not about Israel. Shannon Watts did the same thing too. To pretend the debate to push Piker to the fringes over Israel is not only wrong, it's irresponsible. Anti-Semitism aside, Piker has a long list of indefensible anti-American racist misogynistic offenses. Unsure why so many Dems are eager to defend such a bad guy. We all know what the real reason is, and we all know the real reason is Israel, because you have openly, as a part of Third Way, pushed Democrats to literally align with right-wing forces who actually do demonstrate, maybe not anti-American, but racist and misogynistic offenses. The problem is, once again, in the old era, in the old age of the media, if I was some college activist, or if I was just like some guy with no platform whatsoever, then yes, most things that you heard about me would be from the gatekeepers, right? You would just hear what Dana Bash had to say about me. You'd just hear about Jake Tapper. You would just hear what Mark Levin had to say about me. And that's the only information that you would be able to make up your mind on, right? Like you would be like, this is the only thing I know about this guy. He seems terrible. In the new media environment, it doesn't work that way. I sometimes have either a competitive or sometimes a larger audience.
Holy shit, chat. Austin Ox just posted this about ContraPoint showing up to debate Hasan.
Julian. I don't know where I felt like I get a little drink around Here, do you, bud?
Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Holy shit. Austinox. Jesus. That's like watching somebody warm up to a box and then they just come out and they throw a intentionally low blow. Holy shit. My God. That's crazy.
Than these guys do, right? So people can hear from me directly. So it doesn't work that way. That's kind of what Ezra Klein was talking about. The through line in the freakouts over Rogan and Piker is snobbery and nostalgia. The GOP has already embraced new media, but many liberals still want manor mavens, legacy media gatekeepers who went to Yale and tell them what is acceptable to discuss. That's it. Why does ContraPoints hate you so much? Is it just because you called out her bad Israel take she had? I'm not a fan of her, but she hates you for real. Yeah, she's just leaned into being a total defender of the Democratic Party, has like some right-wing points on that as well, and I don't know why she just has like such a strong affinity towards the nation state of Israel. Could be, some unchecked Islamophobia potentially, but yeah, she became Hasbara points. She was quiet for the longest time on the issue of Israel and then chose to speak out somewhat in favor of Israel and very critical of the pro-Palestinian wing of the party. Literally, I think it was 2 days before there was this massive sea change because there was tremendous amounts of coverage about Israel doing a famine in Gaza. Like, it was unbelievable. 2 years in, she didn't speak about Israel at all. No peep. Her fans were constantly demanding she say.
By the way, Chad, if you want to see someone absolutely rip ContraPoints a new asshole, point by point on her dumb obfuscation, go ahead and watch Debunking ContraPoints' disgraceful statement on my YouTube. I fucking annihilated her.
To a very back.
Oh God, I absolutely. Oh, there she is, chatting with YouTuber ContraPoints, Destiny, talking about Islam. I'm hypervigilant. I'm not traumatized. I'm not in Palestine. I'm looking at a monitor. I'm looking at a screen. This is not trauma. This is information. The people who are going through it are traumatized. How dare you clutch pearls? You used to be an Islamophobic racist yourself, didn't you? Isn't that in your past? Didn't you start posting about how Islam is not compatible with the West?
And so you're kind of put in this very difficult this bind, right? Where if you're a little too Pollyanna-ish about Islam, then you're on the threshold of essentially being an alibi to a very backward and patriarchal religion.
Is that one of your old content, the beginning of your content? That's what you got started on YouTube with, right? Islam, reform or get out. ContraPoints made her start on the internet making anti-Islam extremist content. She fundamentally agrees with American imperialism in the Middle East. Islam, reform or get out. I guess you didn't change your opinions as much as I thought. I was very naive. I thought you had changed. Much of the online left spent all of 2024 single-mindedly focused on Palestine and the complicity of Democratic politicians in sending aid to Israel. This campaign had the following effects. That is not true. This is absolutely not the case. In fact, I was famously very willing to support Kamala Harris if she said she would force a ceasefire in Gaza. I didn't say she had to dismantle Israel. I didn't say she had to sanction Israel. All I wanted her to say is, I will change policy from Biden. That's all I asked for. And a couple small concessions to the left that wasn't just enacting Trump's 2016 immigration platform and wanting to fight wars with Iran and China. And she offered none of it. In fact, she spat in our faces by refusing to even allow a Palestinian who endorsed her to speak at the convention. It may have slightly contributed to the reelection of ladies and gentlemen, ContraPoints absolutely beat the fuck out, annihilated, destroyed. If you want to go back and see her dumb, I think she's been basically contemptible for years now.
Something. Then she went out to Reddit, which is the most, at the time, the most pro-Israel platform that she could find, and released this massive statement. The statement itself was flawed. I guess that's the, best. That's the nicest thing I can say about it, right? The statement itself was flawed, and it basically put the blame on the pro-Palestinian activists and the advocates and the people that were dominated, people who were arrested for advancing this cause, for speaking truth to power, punished relentlessly for it, right? She basically said, oh, you're showing these atrocities. It's like, and it's, making people feel bad. And it also hurt the Democratic Party's chances of winning. It was this ridiculous statement. And the timing of it was so bad. The timing of it was so bad. Like, if she had just kept quiet, she probably would not have received so much backlash. But not only did she, come out with this ridiculous statement, she did it right before there was like unlimited coverage on Israel doing a famine and murdering Palestinian children in a way that was impossible to ignore. So I think, content creators like this, I myself am not, outside of this group either. Nobody likes to be yelled at. Nobody likes to be told that they're wrong, right? And she was inundated with unlimited statements about how wrong she was and how much of a genocidaire she was. And that probably hardened her position. And she, for some weird reason, decided that I was like the primary critic of her statement, I think. Yeah. I mean, it is also because of this as well, I think, maybe. I don't know. Like her being, her doing something with Hillary Rodham Clinton. She thinks you're a community harasser, not understanding that you share similar audiences. Yeah, it's almost like an Ethan Klein moment, right? It's an Ethan Klein thing where it's like, oh, it can't be my own statements being reflected on by my own community that I've cultivated, many of which are anti-Zionist and on the side of truth and justice here, on the side of the Palestinians, getting mad at me. It must be some outsider that's pushing them to criticize me. Not comparing Natalie to Ethan, please. I mean, it's true, though. They're aligned on this. They're aligned on this issue. I say this as someone who's collaborated with her, who's hung out with her, who was shocked by her position on the issue of Israel to begin with. Like, I was pretty open about it. And my commentary on her statement was much nicer, much nicer than many others. My expectation was that she would be the last person to do this because she's actually smart. Like, it was genuinely a surprise. Because
I think one of the things that people really need to reckon with is there are plenty of smart people that are also bigoted sociopaths, right? Like, there are plenty of people that may have such and such skill or talent or even intellect, but nonetheless, they are trapped within some thought-terminating cliches or bigotry. And usually it's because they're being ruled by fear. And honestly, ContraPoints was interesting, and then they became mediocre, and then they became... I think the appropriate way to react to them is apathy.
Ethan Klein is like, he doesn't know shit about politics. He's just responding to whatever he sees on his timeline, whatever is presented to him in his subreddit.
Ethan Klein, by the way, is not intelligent. Ethan Klein is below average intelligent.
Oftentimes by sex pestiny Redditors that LARP as though they are H3 fans, right? She thinks you're a RevCom, so I don't think she knows that much. Wait, what? You just gave him material for his next 6-hour podcast, buddy? Okay, whatever. I don't give a shit. What's he gonna do? Complain about? Is he gonna cancel Ezra Klein now? King Lib. He's gonna be like, Ezra Klein, you're canceled. You're the king of anti-Semite. You got sucked into Hasan's dangerous web of lies, like he did with Sam Cedar. Ezra Klein, another Jew hater. We must cancel our New York Times subscriptions, guys. Like, is that what he's going to do? Okay. Good luck. What is this? Hen Mazik? He is actually, here's his talking points. It's a comforting notion that if we just allow people to spread lies and hate about our brothers and sisters in Israel, they'll hate Jews in the diaspora a little less. But the reality is hate, yes, including that hate that calls for the dissolution of the world's one Jewish state and the home of half a Jews living, has little to do with our actions. Read my take on Ezra Klein's latest op-ed on Hasan Piker on my Substack. It's so funny to read this article or to read this sentiment as anything but if you give equality to all that live in the land that Israel currently occupies and dominates, you want another Holocaust to happen. Okay? It's an unbelievably racist thing to say, and most people don't even comprehend how unbelievably racist it is. We just take it for granted. This is the same exact principle that whites in South Africa presented, where they were like, what, we can't have a white ethno state? What are you talking about? The white dominated ethno state? You just want us to die, huh? Like little old Rhodesia standing alone in the entire continent of Africa can't even have it, you know? It's so stupid. So many black countries. Why can't there be a white one in the continent of Africa? You know, the photo he's using. Yeah, he's trying to say that like Ezra Klein wants to me. It's insane.
All right, chat. I think that's a good place to call it. ContraPoint's irrelevance continues to be even more funny and pathetic. Maya did a TED Talk today, which I can't wait to check out. When is the reaction podcast of Ethan Klein? Oh, baby. The problem is the people that I want to bring on for the Ethan Klein reaction are like getting sued by Ethan. So it is what it is. Oh yeah, Ethan Klein is their stream is dying, dude. It is dying. All right, well, I have to get going, everybody. Thank you so much for supporting the stream. Don't forget, we have our brand new episode of the Reaction Podcast with Liv Agar. With, ladies and gentlemen, maybe one of the funniest episodes yet. Make sure you go check out the Liv Agar podcast. It's so fucking good. The best episode yet. Part 2 is on the, I believe part 2 is on the Patreon. Don't forget that this week we are doing reviews and comments on Apple Podcasts. If you guys could do me a solid and throw a rating and a review, that would be fucking amazing. If you could listen to the podcast, that would be fucking awesome. If you could rate and review us everywhere podcasts are sold. Cole the Troll, thank you for the tier 3. All right, everybody, I am going to call it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I will see you all very soon. Did I put a link to the Patreon in the chat? Hold on. Copy link. Here is the Patreon link. Get in there. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all soon. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. We'll be back tomorrow. And stay safe. Solidarity forever. Socialism will